Mario Party! Welcome to Identifying Luck for Mario Party 8. It is here we will learn how to best improve our odds of winning at the only Mario Party game that shows all minigames from a category on the roulette wheel. Kinda nutty. Let's enter this carnival and enjoy the disclaimer. A lot of events, statistics, items, and more are different depending on whether you're playing in the party tent or the other tents. For the purpose of this video, everything I'm talking about is only in relation to the party tent. So if you notice something is off, that's probably the reason. Now let's get into the bonus stars. We've got the green star, candy star, minigame star, running star, shopping star, and red star. A few of these bonus star names have been changed from previous titles. Happening star turned into green star, orb star turned into candy star, and red space star turned into just the regular red star. Orbs are no more, by the way. We've got candy now. Just like in Mario Party 7, the 3 bonus stars that show up in the end are randomly selected from these 6 with no way of knowing which ones will show, making them a bit unpredictable. Regardless, you should be doing your best to build up your counts on all of them at once while you gather stars on each of the boards so that you can achieve victory no matter which layout of bonus stars appear in the end. Let's get into specifics. The candy star is awarded to the player that used the most candies. You can only use 1 candy per turn, meaning on a 20-turn game, the maximum amount of them that you can chomp down by the end is 19, since you can't start your first turn with one. If you only have 1 candy in your inventory and now isn't really the time to use it, then you've got to consider whether you should use it anyways to raise your candy bonus star count or save it for a better opportunity later. If you're playing against someone who's already ahead in candy count and you don't have much of a chance at catching up, then don't worry about using your candies every turn and save them for the best times. If you're instead playing against some newbies, then eat your candies whenever you like. You may even end up with more candies towards the candy bonus star anyways. If you're really unsure on whether or not to use a candy now or later, then know that it'll depend on what type of candy you're carrying. Red candies are best when you've got somewhere you need to be fast, or a specific space to land on, so look out for notable spaces up ahead and if there are any big moves to make in your current position. Green candies affect all players no matter where you are, so you're free to use them when on any space without worry, unless we're talking about the Springo candy where you've got to keep in mind where the other players' locations are. Yellow candies and blue candies are heavily dependent on where the players are ahead of you, so keep the odds of running into them in mind as you decide if you want to chomp down on something. All that being said, there's a 50% chance of the candy bonus star popping up at the end of the game, so don't get so focused on attaining this bonus star if it means you're giving up any of the others. The minigame star is awarded to the player that collected the most amount of coins from standard minigames and battle minigames, but not dual minigames. This means it's important to get your skill up on the battle minigames so that you don't lose this bonus star due to a high pot value being collected. Oh, and losing coins in the battle minigame won't affect this bonus star. The running star is awarded to the player that moved the most spaces altogether by rolling a dice block. Teleportation or any other fancy means of movement that are done without a dice block do not count towards this bonus star. This one's a bit harder to lock down than the others due to the luck-based nature of rolling dice blocks, but if you prioritize grabbing the candies that let you roll multiple dice blocks, then your odds of obtaining this bonus star will skyrocket. The shopping star is awarded to the player that spent the most coins at a candy shop. More often than not, the player with the spare coins to spend at candy shops will be those that won a lot of minigames, and while in earlier titles this would result in securing this bonus star easier, I'd say this title balanced things a little. When it comes to items in Mario Party 8, none of them ever cost 30 coins, which means if you have a ton of coins to spend, you can't splurge them on a high cost item at the shop to increase your shopping star by a ton. The most you can do is 20 coins, which ain't bad but isn't as good for spending. I'd prioritize grabbing the candies that would best fit my situation over just getting the most expensive ones. There's only a 50% chance of the shopping bonus star even showing up in the end, so it'd suck if you lost out on a candy that would have been crucial towards gaining a lead just so you could spend more coins here. The red star is awarded to the player that landed on the most red spaces. As frustrating as it may be, it's something we've got to deal with. If you're in a situation where losing a few coins won't hurt you, then consider landing on the red space on purpose to up your count towards this bonus star. I'd be hesitant to do this unless I knew for sure that gaining 3 coins by landing on a blue space instead wasn't necessary towards my game plan, because as you may already know, all it takes is a few coins or even a single one to decide the game. Be careful. Our spaces for this title are blue, red, green, which I'll be referring to as happening from now on because I'm stubborn, DK, Bowser, and Lucky. There's the Versus space and Challenge space too, but they don't appear in Party Tent, which I'll be referring to as Party Mode from here on out because, again, I'm stubborn, so we won't be covering them. Landing on the DK space will spawn the Friendly Ape, who will cause a positive effect depending on what board you're currently playing on. Alternatively, landing on the Bowser space will spawn the King Koopa, who will cause a negative effect depending on what board you're currently playing on. We'll cover each of their unique events when we get to the board section, but there's something important to know about these 2 spaces. At the beginning of every game, you'll see multiple DK spaces on the board, but no Bowser spaces. This is because each time a DK space is landed on, all DK spaces, not just the one landed on, will turn into Bowser spaces, and same goes for when a Bowser space is landed on. All Bowser spaces will turn into DK spaces. They used to have separate spaces in previous titles, but it looks like they've gotten closer over the years. Whatever it is, keep this flippy-floppy nature of these spaces in mind as you're about to roll so that you don't mistakenly think one of them is active when in reality the other is. Landing on the lucky space will result in you being taken to the board's lucky area. No matter which board you're on, all the spaces in the lucky area are blue spaces, and each blue space will have 3 coins on it that you can collect by merely touching the space. While a lucky area is active, as in when a player is currently there, the coins atop blue spaces will not reset. They only reset when no players are currently at the lucky area. So once everyone's gone and then a player goes back to this zone, then you can expect the coins to reappear. Free stars in lucky areas are unlimited, meaning that no matter how many players are at the lucky area at one time, everyone can get a star there. These lucky areas will assist you in obtaining stars on the board, whether it be by giving you a star for free, a shortcut to the star, or more items to obtain stars. We'll go over the specifics of each lucky area when we cover the board section. Battle minigames, unlike previous titles, do not appear in lieu of 4-player minigames this time around. This means that regardless of what type of minigame would have been played, a battle minigame can appear. In addition, one battle minigame will always appear by the end. It's impossible to play a game without any battle minigame showing up. The amount of coins stolen from each player is determined via roulette. The possible results are 5, 10, 20, 30, and 50. As always, the low values are more common during the first half of the match, whereas the high values are more common during the second half of the match. Unfortunately, players are no longer given the option to vote on which battle minigame they would like to play. This game returned to the old format of simply choosing the battle minigame at random, which is a bit dangerous here because there's a pure luck-based minigame in this bunch of 5 known as Cut from the Team. There's no helping it if this one gets picked, but practice the others so that you're prepared to win them and nab the most amount of coins from the pot. This title has 14 items referred to as candies for players to obtain. These 3 are red candies, these 3 are green candies, these 4 are yellow candies, and these 4 are blue candies. Each type has its own effects which will be expanded upon later. Unlike Mario Party's 5, 6, and 7, 8 here does not have orb spaces. Or in this case, I guess candy character spaces. There is no throwing your items down onto spaces to make them yours and hope other players pass them or land on them so that they'll suffer the effect of the item you place down. Instead, the items here primarily affect your character, whether it be by movement or doing something to an opponent when you touch down right next to them. While it's a shame that we must leave behind the character space strategies we've grown accustomed to, there's some fun stuff to experience here as well, which you'll see when we visit visit each board. Speaking of which, there's an item table for each board. These tables supply info on how the item shop works, as well as candy giving spaces. Much like the arrows you see on boards, these spaces are not included in the distance count. Yet again though, the item tables have taken up a new form, becoming a lot simpler this time around. Item shop prices now group first and second place together, as well as third and fourth place. Second place having to purchase items at the same rate first place does can be a little frustrating, especially if first place is far ahead in the game since they don't have to pay any more than their runner-up. The item giving space, or candy giving space in this case, now groups first and second place together, as well as third and fourth place together for both the first half and second half of the game, instead of giving each placing their own probability. With those changes stated, let's go in depth with an example of an item table using DK's Treetop Temple. You can see here that not all 14 candies are on the table at once, and that's because only certain candies appear on certain boards. Due to a much lower item count in this title compared to previous, along with the aforementioned changes to these item tables, this is the first kind of them that may actually be possible to memorize without referencing it constantly, especially when we look at the simplest item table we've seen out of all the titles up until this point, with Bowser's Warped Orbit. Even though they're smaller in stature, the most important thing to remember about them is which candies can appear on what board so that you can anticipate possible moves your opponents may make, or prepare moves of your own if you're hoping for a certain candy to pop up in the item shop. Its prices for each candy vary depending on your current placing, which you can see with the Slogo candy as an example. If you're in first or second place, it's 15 coins, whereas if you're in third or fourth place, it's only 10 coins. Some candies will vary more and some will vary less, such as the Twice candy, which will cost 5 coins no matter what place you're in. The item shop will always hold 3 candies, and the item shop will never have a candy in stock that you cannot afford. What it has in stock when you visit is dependent on luck and what half the game is in, with your placing no longer being a factor. For example, if you're in the first half of a game and enter the shop, the first candy in stock has a chance at being any of these candies. These probabilities are applied to each candy in stock, and repeats are not allowed, except for Twice candies, and if you watch the last identifying luck, then yes, it's for the same reason that the mushroom repeats in that title. When you visit the item shop, it rolls for what item will appear in each slot, regardless of whether or not you can afford the item. If you can afford it, then it'll display the item in the shop like normal. However, if the item it rolled is one you cannot afford, then it defaults to a Twice candy, which is why it's the only candy that repeats in the item shop. This makes it so players with a low amount of coins have a much higher chance, or in some cases, a guaranteed chance at only seeing Twice candies in the shop, which can be a bit dismaying if they're in lower placings, since they could probably do with a larger variety in item selection in order to blast on ahead. If you're using the item table during a game or just aiming to memorize it, keep in mind this quirk so that you don't get caught off guard when an opponent has a guaranteed chance to see a Twice candy in stock if their coins permit it. If you have 4 coins or lower, then you will not be able to access the item shop. Regarding candy giving spaces, if you're holding a certain candy in your inventory, then the chances of you picking up that same candy from a candy giving space will be halved. This is an incredibly important detail to remember, as it'll let you impact the odds of which candies will show up for you on candy giving spaces. If you're looking to get a Twice candy from a candy giving space, for example, and you already have one in your inventory, then consider using the one you already have so that you don't diminish your odds of receiving another. Red candies involve changes related to the dice block. Twice candy lets you move using 2 dice blocks. If you roll double 7s, then you'll receive 30 coins. Rolling a double of any other number will instead yield 10 coins. This candy consistently shows up on every board, providing value no matter where you are. Its pricing is always 5 coins, so even if you're low on cash, you can get a lot of use out of this cheap piece of candy. It's a very common drop on the candy giving space, with Goomba's Booty Boardwalk being the only board that doesn't supply it, which makes sense considering this board is a straight line and the devs must want to reduce players getting lucky and blasting ahead of the others. or at least that was my guess until I saw that Thrice candies were available here too. Despite how common this candy shows up, that doesn't mean you should be using it willy-nilly. The boards here can get a bit kooky, so finding opportune times to use your Twice candy is imperative, such as needing to escape from opponents behind you that are carrying some of the dangerous yellow candies and blue candies. Wasting a Twice candy when it doesn't matter will leave you vulnerable in situations like these where your coins can get taken, or if you're playing on Bowser's Warped Orbit, a star. Check the map for opposing players and keep an eye out for them at all times to ensure you can find the right time to use this candy. There is no shortage of annoying items for players to bump into you with, so always be on the lookout. Thrice candy lets you move using 3 dice blocks. If you roll triple sevens, then you'll receive 100 coins, up from 50 coins that the previous titles had set. Since the odds of this happening are incredibly low, that doesn't mean you should be banking on receiving 100 coins by rolling triple sevens, but it is an awesome bonus to appreciate should you happen to get lucky. Rolling a triple of any other number will instead yield 30 coins. Thrice candies show up on every board except for Bowser's Warped Orbit, likely because Bullet candies and Bowser candies already let players roll more than 1 dice block to blast around the area, and with the Twice candy, players are going to be moving a ton already. They are fairly common at the item shop and even from candy spaces. This candy is a bit pricey this time around though. The higher placed pricings is still the same at 20 coins, but since the lower placings are now bunched together, there is no longer a 10 coin amount for last place to enjoy. Instead, last place has to suffer the 15 coin cost that third place does, resulting in less potential for lower placings to blast ahead in space count. This shouldn't be too big of a deal so long as you're winning enough minigames to keep your coin count up, but if you see yourself running low, then you've got to keep in mind the same thing you should be doing when using a Twice candy. Watch the board and look ahead for notable events you wish to move towards quickly or escape from. Slow Go candy lets your dice block roll slowly in ascending order from 1 to 5. This is essentially a nerfed version of the slow shroom item from previous titles, which had the same effect but allowed the dice block to roll from 1 to 10 instead. This nerf is a bit of a bummer, but considering this title has the ever so powerful lucky spaces on every board, it makes sense why the devs decided to make this change. Nevertheless, it's easy to time what roll you want when using this candy, allowing you to land on pretty much anywhere you want within 5 spaces, which can be incredibly powerful if a lucky space is within your reach, or if there are some notable spaces such as happenings that you're planning on taking advantage of. This candy shows up on DK's Treetop Temple, Koopa's Tycoon Town, Shy Guy's Perplex Express, and Bowser's Warped Orbit. It's 15 coins for higher placings and 10 coins for lower, with DK's Treetop Temple breaking this pattern by pricing it at 10 coins for higher placings. This ensures more of a balance between placings, where first and second must suffer from the more expensive cost for such a valuable candy, while third and fourth will be happy to take on the cheaper cost. The Express has a lot of potential for chaos, considering landing on a DK space or Bowser space here will result in either DK or Bowser replacing the head of the train and giving away a free star or stealing a star respectively. The ability to purposely cause either of these events to happen, whether so you can attain a free star or cause your opponent to lose one, is a big deal, and that's not even considering the lucky space and happening spaces you could land on here too. Bowser's Warped Orbit gets a ton of mileage with this candy as well, considering it's a game of stealing from your opponents and safeguarding yourself from steals. Green candies allow the player to perform a specific action using the dart wheel. Springo candy lets you warp to another player's space via the dart wheel. Oh boy, another roulette wheel for the record books. Want to take a guess if this one's random or not? Here, you've got to hold down the A or B button and do a swing of your Wiimote to throw a dart. Whoever you land on is the target of the effect. Each player will have their face showing up twice on the dart wheel opposite of one another, which might make you suspect that this one isn't timeable, but thankfully, it totally is. All you've got to do to nail the target you want is throw your dart as soon as your target is on the leftmost part of the wheel. There are other spots of the wheel you can use as timing markers as well, but I encourage you to use this marker over any other for reasons you'll see later in the video. So get this timing down and you can basically choose the target of your effects each time this wheel comes up. You have 10 seconds to throw your dart, by the way, and after 10 seconds passes, the game will throw the dart for you. But wait a minute, doesn't this mean that if you let this event time out, that you can guarantee a certain character without doing anything should they be the one you want to affect? Unfortunately, no. The automatic dart throw the game does has a random amount of delay applied to it each time, making it unreliable here, so if you want consistent selections, practice this dart wheel a lot. It'll greatly help out your game to reduce what ends up being a luck-based event for many. The Springo candy in particular is an incredibly powerful tool which can greatly change the course of the game if you manage to move towards another player's amazing position. It only shows up on DK's Treetop Temple, Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, and Koopa's Tycoon Town. Its cost is 20 coins for the higher placings and 10 for lower, often being a fantastic purchase when playing on Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, whose whole board gimmick is all about moving in a straight line to the end. So if you can grab an item that allows you to skip everything and plop down right next to a player at the end of the long path, then you'll save yourself a ton of turns. It's equally useful in the Hideaway, where if you realize you've taken the wrong path towards King Boo, you can spring towards a player that's taken a different path to correct yourself. This isn't to say that this candy is bad on the other two boards, but the situations where you can attain maximum value out of it are a bit lower and sparser as the game goes on. Cash Zap Candy lets you obliterate half a player's coins via the dart wheel, an incredibly powerful effect that gives you even more reason to learn the timing of the dart wheel so that you don't screw up what could have been a game-changing move. This candy only shows up on DK's Treetop Temple, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, and Koopa's Tycoon Town. Its cost at the item shop is fairly high for all placings, with its odds of appearing from candy-giving spaces ranging from really high to a solid 0. Koopa's Tycoon Town is, by far, the board that gets the most value out of this candy, due to its gimmick of investing coins into hotels for stars, just like Windmillville from the previous title. The devs certainly knew a candy like this would be useful here, which is probably why the odds of seeing it in an item shop are a lot higher here than on the other two boards at 30%, no matter what turn the game is on. You can see that the candy giving space probabilities are completely in favor of the lower placings too, so if you're behind in the game and need to shake things up, then going for a candy giving space in hopes for nabbing a cash zap as your big move ain't a bad strategy. The other boards still see good use with this candy, but I wouldn't go out of my way to purchase it as often unless there was a threat with an insane coin lead. Then I've just gotta grab this candy to humble them. Vampire Candy lets you steal a select amount of coins from your opponents determined by the dart wheel. This is different from the Cash Zap Candy in that you are stealing a select amount of coins from all players, not just eliminating half of a particular player's coins. The dart wheel that pops up will have the results 1, 5, and 10 on it, and in the same formation as the previous dart wheels. Don't overthink it. The timing is the exact same as you're used to. Just throw the dart the instant the result you want is in the leftmost position. If it is absolutely critical that you steal at least 5 coins, then throw your dart when the 10 coin result is on the upper left side of the wheel instead of the leftmost side. This way, if you throw your dart a little early, you'll safely get 5 coins, and if you throw it late, you'll safely get 10 coins, avoiding the 1 coin result so long as you don't completely screw up your timing. This candy only shows up on Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, Koopa's Tycoon Town, and Bowser's Warped Orbit. Whereas the Cash Zap candy is incredibly useful at a targeted attack on a single player's coins, the Vampire candy here is useful in increasing your own coin count. If you end up getting the 5 coin steal, then you either break even if you purchase the higher amount or only gain 5 coins if you purchase the lower. This obviously wouldn't be an issue so long as you know how to time the dart wheel, but it's still not a candy that I see myself buying too often unless it's more pivotal for me to reduce multiple players' coin counts at once. Koopa's Tycoon Town is the spot where I can see this happening the most, since 10 coins can be the difference between winning and losing as players invest coins into all the different hotels. Increasing your wallet so that you can invest yourself is also a sweet bonus. Yellow candies grant the player an ability which will be active throughout the duration of their turn. When under the effects of a yellow candy, they cannot pick up candies from candy-giving spaces, nor visit item shops, but can still interact with other board events. This is an incredibly important downside to keep in mind when using a yellow candy. Weigh the pros and cons between potentially skipping either of the candy areas versus getting the effects of the yellow candy you chow down. Bit Size Candy lets you collect 3 coins via hitting a coin block every time you take a space. The least amount of coins you can gain from this candy is 3 if you move 1 space, whereas the maximum amount of coins you can gain is 30 if you move 10 spaces. This candy only shows up on DK's Treetop Temple, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, Koopa's Tycoon Town, and Shy Guy's Perplex Express. It cannot be found in item shops shops, only appearing from candy-giving spaces. This candy's effect is pretty straightforward and is always a nice find unless your coin count is already ridiculously high. If one of your opponents is about to obliterate your wallet or steal coins from you, then consider holding on to this candy until the dangers pass so that it's safe to use it. In instances where you don't have enough coins to afford a star ahead of you, use this candy so that you have just the right amount to purchase it upon reaching your destination. You can't use it right before an item shop to gain just enough coins for certain items, since, as we just went over, you will skip the shop while in this form, so keep that in mind. Blow Away Candy lets you send any opponent you pass back to the start of the board. This candy can only be found on DK's Treetop Temple and Goomba's Booty Boardwalk. Its cost difference between placings at the item shop is larger than any other candy in the game, with higher placings taking a 15 coin pricing and lower placings taking a 5 coin pricing. I often don't end up purchasing this candy on DK's Treetop Temple since there's a lot of potential to accidentally help an opponent out when sending them back to the start, since there are a few star spaces close to the area. It can be good if you've been doing a good job at keeping track of where the next star will spawn, or if you know that the current star spot that's far away won't be changing anytime soon, but I'd rather prioritize grabbing movement candies such as Twice, Thrice, and Springos instead. It's Goomba's Booty Boardwalk where this candy truly shines. Having the ability to whisk an opponent all the way back to the start is insane on a board where players have to travel in a straight line for a star. Unfortunately, this candy does not show up in the item shop here, only appearing to the higher placings at candy spaces, which is brutal for the lower placings. The dangers of this candy is why you want to grab Springos to spring back to the player that blew you away should you suffer from its effect. Wiggly Candy lets you steal a random piece of candy from any opponent you pass. If the opponent has no candy, nothing will happen. It can only be found on DK's Treetop Temple and Shy Guy's Perplex Express. Just like the bit-sized candy, it cannot be found at an item shop. This can be a devastating candy should you find the right time to use it, such as when there are multiple players ahead of you. If you manage to pass by each of them, then you'll steal a random candy from each player and add them to your own inventory. This reduces your opponent's abilities to make strategic plays and increase your options in the upcoming turns. While doing multiple steals in a row like this is a ton of fun when pulled off, don't pass up a good steal opportunity from a threat. If they've got a movement candy and are about to secure a huge lead by using it, then steal it from them to cripple their game plan. This title is mean and doesn't let you know what exact candy each player is holding onto, so make sure you do your best to memorize what players have in their inventory as you consider whether or not a steal would be the best move at the time. Bolo Candy lets you steal 10 coins from any player you pass. Honestly, I don't end up grabbing this candy all that often. I just don't see its use in a lot of cases. There is the obvious golden scenario where multiple players are ahead of you, so you're free to attain a ton of coins at the cost of their wallets, but this situation is rather rare, so I often end up grabbing other stuff. This candy only shows up on DK's Treetop Temple, Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, Koopa's Tycoon Town, and Shy Guy's Perplex Express. Its pricing isn't even that cheap, with 15 coins for the higher placings on all boards it appears on, except for Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, where it's only 10. The lower placings do get to enjoy the cheaper 5 coin cost, but I'd only grab it if there was nothing else available, if only to up my candy bonus star, or if I need another player to lose some coins. Blue candies, much like yellow candies, grant the player an ability which will be active throughout the duration of their turn, except these candies are much more offensive oriented. Thwomp Candy lets you obliterate half of any player's coins that you pass. Passing by shops, again, sucks a ton, but I feel it's more warranted here. Cutting a player's coins in half is huge, as we've previously discussed, but having the ability to do it to multiple players in a row is a big deal. There's still a situational aspect here to consider, but even obliterating the threat's coin total by a substantial amount is often worth it. This candy only shows up on Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, and Shy Guy's Perplex Express. Its cost is fairly high and something I wouldn't purchase when it comes to the Boardwalk, considering stars are free there, so the amount of coins a player has doesn't really matter as much. It's a lot of fun to use in the Express since it has no junctions that players can take to escape your wrath, but I'd still hesitate on outright purchasing this candy for that purpose. I just feel a lot more comfortable having Twice candies and Thrice candies in my inventory so that I can move around the train easier, as well as keep myself safe from other players. If I happen to get a Thwomp candy from a candy giving space, then I'll absolutely make the most out of it, but otherwise I'll pass on it at the item shop. Bullet candy and Bowser candy. We'll be covering them at the same time since they both only appear on Bowser's warped orbit due to its star stealing gimmick. They each have high probabilities at showing up at the item shop and candy giving spaces no matter what turn the game is on or what place you're in. Their costs at the item shop differ for 3rd and 4th place, where the Bowser candy is cheaper by 5 coins. The Bullet Bill candy lets you roll 3 dice blocks and grants you the ability to steal 1 star from another player upon passing them, whereas the Bowser candy lets you roll 2 dice blocks and grants you the ability to steal 2 stars from another player upon passing them. The decision you have to make when choosing between each of these candies at a shop is whether you value higher odds at stealing a single star via the Bullet Bill candy or whether you value a lower chance at stealing 2 stars via the Bowser candy. This, of course, is a bit reductive since in certain scenarios, the Bowser candy can be a guaranteed 2-star steal if any targets are close by to you, but more often than not, opponents will be further away, leaving you to choose which candy suits your situation better. Information that will help you make your selection is looking at where the other players currently are and how many stars each of them have. You may find yourself in a situation where there's one player close by with another one further away. Do you use your Bowser candy to steal 2 stars from the one player in front of you, or do you use your Bullet Bill candy to steal 1 star from the player in front of you and 1 star from the player further away? That'll depend on how much of a threat each player is and what potential they have to steal back from you. I personally like having a balance between these two candies. If I already have a Bullet Bill candy in my inventory, then I'll tend to buy a Bowser candy to even myself out, and vice versa. If there's a player behind you getting ready to go for a steal, then consider using one of your candies to simply roll multiple dice blocks as means of escape. Even if you don't steal from anyone, sometimes just preventing a player from stealing from you is enough. While yes, you could let them steal from you and just hope you roll high enough to steal from them back, we all know that isn't guaranteed, and if you're in a position where losing anything would be a major drawback, such as at the end of the game, then there's no shame in running away using either of these candies. Duolo candy lets you roll 2 dice blocks, and if you pass an opponent, you will be forced to start a duel minigame with that opponent. If multiple players are on the same space you pass by, then you'll be given the option to choose who you wish to duel. After you complete the duel minigame, you will land on the same space as the other player instead of continuing your dice moves. We're back at it again with another duel roulette, but this time it's not terrible kind of. Here are all the possible dart wheels along with what determines which is selected. So if you win and the person you beat has 1 star, then you will see this dart wheel with 3 10-coin results, 2 20-coin results, and 1 1-star result. Oh, and the timing of the dart wheel works here too, and since the dart wheel's outcomes are much better for the attacker, you're encouraged to duel players more in this title than any other. Not only that, but keep in mind that this candy lets you move using 2 dice blocks, so if there's no one ahead of you and you need to move more spaces, you're free to munch down for that purpose as well. On top of that, you've got to keep in mind that this candy has the quirk of making you land on the space of the player you pass by. So if they're on a spot that you desperately wish to land on, or just if you want to stop yourself short and not move much further, then this candy helps you out with that too. The only boards it can show up on are DK's Treetop Temple, Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, King Boo's Haunted Hideaway, and Shy Guy's Perplex Express. Its pricing is pretty fair considering the incredible value you can gain out of it if you manage to duel the player you want, win the minigame, and time your throw to steal their star. Obviously, if you're not that skilled at duel minigames, then grabbing this guy at the item shop is probably a no-go for you, but its power can be game-changing. So as always, I recommend you get good at the duel minigames to not only secure bigger leads, but prevent attackers from stealing your coveted stars. It's especially fun to grab a duelo candy on the Boardwalk or Express, since neither of these boards have any splitting paths, preventing any targets of yours from running away from your wrath. Chump Charity. Once the final 5 turns are reached, Ballyhoo will review the player's placings and will grant the player in last place a free duelo candy. If multiple players tie for last place, then he'll grant each of them a duelo candy. This is all true unless you're playing on Koopa's Tycoon Town, which doesn't allow you to get duelo candies, resulting in the last place player getting 30 coins instead. Now, what I said may sound strange because Bowser's warped orbit also doesn't let you get duelo candies, but despite that, Ballyhoo will give the last place player a duelo candy anyways. weird. This Duelo candy gift is another reason to make sure you're adept at the duel minigames in this title, for if you're lagging behind and Ballyhoo gives you a boost, you can take full advantage of his charity work and challenge a threat in the game in an attempt to steal their star. 30 coins is a nice gift when in town, so make sure you invest it properly. After his gift, Ballyhoo will place coin bags worth 5 coins on every red space and a single coin on every other space. They can only be collected once by the first player who reaches the space they're on. There are no other events that occur during Chump Charity, making this title's final 5 turns events extremely predictable. As it's about to appear, ensure that you have a twice candy, or better yet, a thrice candy in your inventory so that you can roll multiple dice blocks and blast around the board, collecting all the coins and coin bags you can get your hands on. It's actually pretty good to be rolling before the other 3 players when it comes to this event, because if you and the others are bunched up together, then you can take all the coins and coin bags before they do. Before we move on to the board section, keep in mind that the advice I'm about to give will be pertaining to the board itself. There are billions of different setups between how many stars players have, how many coins, where everyone is, and what they have in their inventory. There's no one-size-fits-all solution I can give for every situation, so I'll instead be covering common scenarios so that you can get a good handle on what to expect in a real game and increase your decision-making abilities when it comes to dealing with strategies other players may employ. One of the most important things you can do is memorize what candies belong to what players, since that'll let you know what options your opponents have at their disposal, letting you come up with countermeasures as the game goes on. If you're unsure what a certain player has, then try asking the others you're playing with. I'm sure they'll be honest. We've climbed up to DK's Treetop Temple. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it has a pretty average space layout. You know what time it is. We've got to remind ourselves once more how the star space works. Only here on DK's Treetop Temple, when you buy a star, the star space itself will move to another random location. However, only certain spaces have been programmed to host a star. We refer to these spaces as star spaces. When a star space isn't active, it'll look like an average blue space. If you're in the middle of a game and these 5 star spaces have been deactivated and you notice that the current active star space is this one, then you know that the next one will pop up here, since all the other spots are either currently deactivated or will deactivate after the star has been purchased. Just like Mario Party 6 and 7, the star cycle repeats, meaning if this was the order the star space is activated in, then after they've all been activated, they'll repeat that same order over and over again. In addition, a star cannot spawn on a space that a player is standing on, meaning that the star will skip any space that's currently occupied by a player and will instead move on to the next star space in the cycle. The bad part about this is that it becomes more difficult to learn what the star cycle is, since if another player is currently where a star could spawn as a star is being purchased, then you have no clue if the next real spawn was where they were and they just blocked it, or if the next spawn is genuinely somewhere else. The good part about this is that you can use star blocking to your advantage by purposely landing on the space that the star is about to spawn at if you don't want a player behind you nabbing it. This is an easy task to accomplish on this board since the slow go candy is available here. Simply roll the number you need to land where the next star will appear so that you can successfully block it and force it to move to the next spot in the cycle. If someone does this to you, then focus on moving towards the next spot the star will appear at. This board only has 7 star spaces, which is fairly low, so feel free to figure out the star cycle with ease. There are 2 cannons on the board, one on the bottom left and one on the bottom right. Taking one costs 5 coins. Regardless of which one you take, you have a 50-50 chance of being sent to the top left landing pad or the top right landing pad. Luckily, each landing pad is close to a star space, meaning if one is currently active or if one is about to activate next turn and you land on any of the spaces before it, then taking either cannon is a good move. That last detail is pretty important, by the way. Using these cannons doesn't stop you right onto the space after the landing spot. You can still move the amount of spaces you have left. Even if you're not in a situation where getting a star is possible, you could have just the right amount of spaces to land in one of the happening spaces to up your count on them, or if you simply would just like to move to a different part of the board for any other reason. One big secret about these cannons is that whichever landing pad you get launched to by either cannon will stay the same if you manage to launch out of a cannon a second time within the same turn. So if you got shot to the top right landing pad, for example, and have enough spaces to work your way down to the bottom right cannon, then you will get shot to the top right landing pad again, regardless of which cannon you shoot out of. Same is true if you manage to reach the cannon a third time in the same turn or more with secret abilities. This is extremely important because you could have a lot of spaces left to move and purposely take the cannon once more, knowing exactly where it's going to take you next. This can only be made possible by rolling multiple dice blocks using a twice candy or thrice candy, so keep that in mind when using them before the cannons. You could also use these cannons for catching unsuspecting players off guard. You could use a blowaway, bolo, or wiggly candy and then enter the cannon, resulting in you being shot towards one of the two landing spots, hopefully near your target, who you can then run into to activate your effect. A great move that can seriously deal some damage, since a lot of players don't even consider the possibility of players reaching them and dealing damage from across the board like this. It's also something you want to keep in mind if you see other players buy this cannon. So if you're next to one of the two landing spots and an opponent's getting ready to rock your world, then use a movement candy to get out of there. Landing on the happening space below the DK statue or right above the starting area will cause ukikis to appear on barrels to force any player on their rolling path here to this blue space. You could be right before the lucky space, about to head right on the junction, doesn't matter. If you're on their path, then you will be forced to go left here, which can be incredibly annoying considering you've got to loop back around if you want any hope at going to the right again. And even if you do, there's always a possibility that someone, not just you, will land on one of the two happening spaces and start the cycle all over again. As always, this is why it's critical to keep your movement candies on hand. Whereas other events on this board can be a bummer if landed on, this event can waste you multiple turns at a time, which you do not want to be wasted again and again. However, you could be a villain and purposely land on one of these two happening spaces using a slow go if your aim is to prevent a threat that's further ahead from reaching a notable space or the star. This kind of move can absolutely cripple their chances of winning if they don't have an easy way of recovering, but be careful. Keep in mind the cannon on the bottom left here. If the star is available next to one of the landing spots, then moving the threat towards this cannon may inadvertently help their game. One lesser known detail about this event is that if the ukikis roll over any coins or coin bags that were dropped onto spaces during Chump Charity, then they'll remove them off the spaces. But if you get chased by ukikis, then you'll collect all the coins and coin bags off the spaces you get chased onto. With this in mind, you could purposely land on the ukiki happening while there's a large amount of coins behind you, and not only get a happening space out of it to up your count towards the bonus star, but some coins to boot. While upping your happening count is nice, there are other worthwhile events here to try landing on instead, such as this one near the water slide, which will make you ride it all the way to this space, gathering coins along the way. The range of coins you have the possibility of gaining depends on your current placing. This bias towards certain placings receiving a certain range of coins means you've got to pay attention to your own placing as you decide whether or not you want to purposely land here using a slow go candy. Even if you would benefit from the happening a lot, you may want to consider skipping it if either of the two star spaces it skips are currently active. Getting some coins and a happening count is normally not worth the trouble over a guaranteed star. The three happening spaces in front of the piranha plants makes one of them chew on just the player that landed on the space, resulting in them losing 10 coins. It's pretty common for players to land on one of these happenings considering there's 3 of them in a row. Thankfully, the coin loss isn't too huge, so upping your happening count ain't too bad. If you desperately need to avoid losing any coins whatsoever, then your movement candies will help you out a ton here. But if you're planning on using a slow go to bypass these guys, then unless you're not very confident you'll win the next minigame, I personally wouldn't use it here. This happenings effect just isn't as impactful as the other events you could reach when using a slow go, and let me tell you, coming across a slow go here isn't as likely as it is on other boards, so you want to make sure you save them for the most crucial of situations. There are 2 happening spaces in front of spear guy platforms. Landing on one will cause a spear guy to appear and take one of your candies in exchange for some coins. The candy is chosen at random, but the amount of coins you're given is based on how much the candy costs at the item shop for first and second place. If you were curious why bits its size and weakly had price values at the item shop despite not appearing there, then this is why. As an example, if he happens to take a Thrice candy from you, then he'll give you 20 coins, since that's how much it costs for first and second place at the item shop. Knowing exactly how many coins you can gain from this happening can be quite helpful if you know there's a possibility of you landing on it in the near future, or if you need some coins to make a move and you have a slow-go on hand to pawn off one of your candies for some cash. Don't be quick to take this course of action though, since losing your candies means losing opportunities for making more varied moves in the future. Only willingly give up candies that you know won't be useful anytime soon, or if it's just that crucial for you to get some more coins. If you don't have any candy, then the spear guy will give you 5 coins. How kind of him. Landing on the DK space makes the big ape appear. He'll hurl you all the way to the star space no matter where it is, but you'll still have to pay 20 coins for it. This is an incredibly powerful space that you need to look out for. Keep in mind the fact that DK spaces and Bowser spaces swap whenever a player lands on one, so don't be quick to assume that you're getting a free trip to the star when Bowser's laying down in wait. Check the map when you're at a junction to see if landing on DK is possible and if you have enough coins to afford the star. If you don't, then in some cases it may be better to avoid DK and just run towards the star normally so that you can gain enough coins to afford it once you reach it. Alternatively, you could just simply use DK as means of moving to a different part of the board. That works too. Landing on a Bowser space causes Bowser to appear and move the star to a different location. As you may have guessed, the location he moves it to is the next spot in the star cycle, making this event a lot more predictable. You could use a slow-go candy to purposely land in the Bowser space, knowing that the next spot the star will appear in is right in front of you. You can make this move more often than you think, considering that the DK and Bowser spaces aren't too far away from the star spaces, with this one in the bottom left corner literally just being a step away from destiny. You could also just land on a Bowser space to screw over a threat from getting the star after they've committed to a path as well. Either move works. There's also a lucky space in front of the DK statue, and I don't gotta tell you how good these are. Landing on it will throw you to a secret path found behind the statue, where, like every other lucky area in the game, there are 3 coins atop every blue space. In addition, there's a star at the end here which you can grab for free. After nabbing it, you'll enter a warp pipe and pop out right back at the start. There are very few times where you'll want to pick using a slow-go candy on a space other than the lucky space here. With a board like this one, where stars are bouncing all over the place and you're getting unfortunate with where they pop up, a guaranteed star along with a generous helping of coins is a luxury to behold. Getting sent back to the star is often treated as a punishment a lot of the time in Mario Party titles, but if you purposely land on the space when getting sent to the start would be a good thing, such as when a star is spawned close by to it, then there's nothing to worry about. If you and another player find yourself on the lucky area with one another, then keep in mind that the coins will not come back until all players have left the lucky area. The free star, however, will keep respawning over and over as players grab them. If you've got a blowaway candy and are in this situation with another player, then use it and get them out of here. They can go back to start empty-handed. All the loot here is yours. The first junction you arrive at asks you to go left or right, and honestly, I tend to go left here more often than not. This is because the right path consists of the Ukiki events we talked about earlier, and with a lot of players heading right, it's likely that you'll end up getting forced left anyways, so it's better to just get a head start on that direction. Only time I would go right at the beginning here is if the star spawned on this path, and even then, if I'm not feeling particularly lucky, I might still go left just to save me any trouble. Here, you're almost immediately met with another junction letting you go left or up. The main reason to head left is if the star space below is active, or to use the bottom left cannon. Another possible reason is if the star placement just got switched and it'd be better for you to loop back to the starting section, or if you'd like to stock up on more candy. I advise you to double check whether DK or Bowser is available at the moment so that you don't accidentally end up visiting the wrong dude. If you head up, then you'll immediately visit an item shop for some candies. The spaces after that aren't super friendly, with a red space followed by the 3 Piranha Plant happenings. Yeah, this place kinda sucks. I'll normally buy a twice candy or thrice candy here if I don't already have one in my inventory, so I can skip the crappy parts of this path and enjoy the rest of what it has to offer. That being a candy giving space, another item shop, the slide happening, and 3 star spaces. That is a lot of stuff, but keep in mind that when you take this path, you are on it for 37 spaces until you reach another junction. Yes, this can be shortened should you land on the slide happening or take the bottom right cannon, but it's more often than not a big commitment, so don't skimp out on grabbing movement candies to make this journey more bearable. If at the starting junction you happen to go right, you have the option of taking a right at this junction, which immediately grants you a candy and leads you to 2 star spaces as well as the cannon on the bottom right. If you realize that you're about to land on the Ukiki happening above and you don't want to get forced to go left, then heading right here instead could be a better move. This loop back to the start isn't too long, and if you find yourself grabbing a movement candy from this candy giving space, then you can get back into the thick of it in no time, especially if you decide to end up using the cannon. Again, just be careful about the DK/Bowser space. I've gone on and on about how useful twice candies and thrice candies are here, so don't forget to grab them. Slow goes should not be used for simply rolling high numbers, as they're less common on this board as others, and should be primarily used for landing on the extremely powerful lucky space or any happening spaces that benefit your game. Springo candies are common, but despite this, they should be saved for when a threat is about to reach a star, or better yet, if you notice a threat has a slow go and is planning to land on a lucky space or has just landed on a lucky space. Since they can't move any more spaces after landing on this pivotal space and must wait until their next turn to move, you could spring to them, nab all the coins in the area before they do, and get a free star to boot. They'll still be able to grab a star for themselves since the stars are unlimited here, but denying them all the coins and stealing them for yourself can be a great boost to your game and a detriment to a threat. Even if no one is in an amazing position, sometimes it's good to use your Springo just to get out of a terrible position where you know multiple of your turns are being wasted. Just make sure that this is actually the case before making a hasty decision though. Cash Zap candies are fantastic for obliterating a threat's coins and should be held onto for this purpose. Anyone below 40 coins will not be able to afford a star on their next turn when hit by this candy, so keep in mind everyone's coin amounts and how far they are from a star when making your selection. Bit-sized candies shouldn't be used when you're about to get stolen from and are better used right before you need the amount of coins you'll gain from them. Granted, there's enough space before the star or item shop for the coins to be worth it. Blowaway candies can backfire if you don't have the star cycle kept in mind. I prefer using it near the later part of the game once I've got a good feel for everything, or if I'm feeling lucky at the beginning. Bolo candies can nail multiple players in a row that are gunning for the star, but on a board like this one where junctions are available to avoid players, it can be difficult to pull off. Don't hope for anything super big and aim for using it against single players that are big threats. I prioritize using Wiggly candies to steal slow goes as often as possible due to how amazing some of the spaces are here. Don't fret if no slow go is available, for stealing from multiple players in a row can be fantastic, or if you just happen to get a thrice out of it. I wouldn't outright buy Duelo here unless I was behind, but it can be useful if you have no other way to get ahead in the game. Overall, DK's Treetop Temple is a very movement event oriented board, with cannons to blast you places, a waterfall to bring you down, and Ukikis to roll you away from select spaces. There's no shortage of things trying to place you in different spots, so it's vital to keep your stock up on movement candies to counteract these events or use them to your advantage. Arr matey, we've arrived to Goomba's Booty Boardwalk. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it's just like DK's Treetop Temple by having an average space layout. I hate these guys. Just like Pagoda Peak from Mario Party 7, this board is a one-way path to destiny towards the star. That's right, no junctions. At the end of the path, you'll meet Captain Goomba, who will give you a star for no cost whatsoever, where you will then be transported back to the start. This free star-giving policy that the Captain has means you are absolutely free to spend as many coins as you like at the item shop without worry of not having enough coins to purchase a star at the end. This is an important detail to keep in mind, since I'll often see players overlook this quirk of the board, not recalling how different this one plays out in practice. The dolphins you see here are an integral part of the board, but it'd be much better if we covered the other events first for reasons you'll see later. Landing on the happening spaces next to the fishing piantas causes their rod to catch a piece of candy. They will always give the candy they fished out to you, but will keep it if your inventory is full, so don't be afraid to use your candies before coming upon this space. They can only grant you a candy that's available at the item shop, meaning only twice, thrice, springos, bolos, thwomps, and dulos. They cannot fish out a vampire or blowaway candy since those don't appear at the item shop. There's an equal probability of reeling in any of the former candies mentioned. which is actually a little worse than if this event simply followed the item table probabilities, but there's no helping that. Since these fishing happenings are just a single space and not multiple of them in a row, there's not a high probability of landing on them, so I wouldn't blow one of the candies in my inventory just to make sure I had a slot empty when coming upon these guys. But if I, say, would rather have a movement candy instead of a bolo or thwomp candy in my inventory, then I'd blow one of them in hopes of getting something different from here. Landing on the happening space next to the shipwreck will make you go inside and get coins out of it from a chest. The amount of coins you can gain from this event will be either 5, 10, or 20 coins. It is completely random and does not favor certain placings. Cute detail here is that the chest size will differ depending on which of the results it is, so you can feel free to call how many coins you're about to get before it happens to look like a profit to your friends. The possibility of getting a ton of coins from this happening is nice, but it's nothing I'd ever bank on activating. Feel free to use your movement candies to roll on by here and hurry your way to the cabin for your free star. It's not that many spaces away from here. However, you may want to save your movement candies for the next event we're about to talk about, which is the happening space next to the cabin ship. Landing on it will cause the Goomba pirates to stuff ye into their cannon and blast you all the way back to the start. A total tragedy that you need to avoid at all costs. There is no reason to try and land on this space. It is terrible, so screw what I said earlier about skipping the shipwreck happening and hold on to your movement candies for this situation. Entering this final stretch without a twice candy or thrice candy will result in you giving yourself up to the whims of fate. And man, does fate not like playing nice here. Chomp down in either of these guys the moment you see the ship in sight and hope you roll past this stupid event so that you can claim your free star. Landing on any of the happening spaces next to a yellow Pianta will cause them to chuckster you 3 to 9 spaces. The amount you're thrown is random and you can only land on a blue space or red space. This means that the first chuckster can throw you past the first dolphin event or just barely past the item shop. This is definitely a bummer since it's only a single space, but it's not such a tragedy that I'd recommend rolling multiple dice blocks just to avoid this guy. The second chuckster can throw you past the lucky space, ouch, and past the second dolphin event, but not past the item shop this time around. The odds of getting thrown past the lucky space is higher than not, which is something that we can't really help. After all, if you try to roll multiple dice blocks to skip this happening, then you'll also be rolling double dice blocks to skip the lucky space as well, unless you're rather far away or just get lucky. The third chuckster is easily the most inoffensive one, only throwing you past the shipwreck happening mentioned earlier and a DK space. Landing on one will cause DK to appear, who will force you to deposit 5 coins into a DK barrel. But don't worry, he's not robbing you, he's helping you, for you'll be asked to shake the barrel, and the better you do at shaking, the more coins you'll get back from a range of 11 to 25 coins. Your shake should be extremely fast and small. Avoid doing large sweeping motions. If you have no coins to play with, then DK will just outright give you 10 coins. Compared to DK events on every other board, this one isn't as helpful, especially when you recall that coins here don't matter as much due to stars being free. It's nothing to complain about if you land on a DK space, but don't feel guilty if you choose to roll past one if you use a twice candy or thrice candy. Landing on the Bowser space will cause Bowser to appear, who will summon 3 Podoboos to attack you for 10 coins lost per hit, for a maximum of 30 coins lost if you get hit 3 times. You have the ability to avoid them by shaking the Wiimote up to jump. Their attack pattern is the same every time, with them circling around you, pausing, and then moving towards you at once and separating again. As soon as they're about to close in on you and touch you, shake your Wiimote up to jump. Simply repeat this each time they go for you and you won't ever lose coins to this easy event. If you visit Bowser here without any coins, then he'll kindly grant you 10 coins. If you land on the lucky space, then you'll be carried by the secret 4th dolphin to the island sacred to Goombas. Here you can get some of the coins atop blue spaces as always, but more importantly, there's a chest at the end of the 6 space path containing a free star, letting you grab one a lot quicker than if you just kept on taking the regular path. But get this, once you grab this star, you'll be taken back to the lucky space, allowed to move improve your remaining spaces on the regular path. Sweet and simple. But now that we've covered all the events on the board, we can finally go over the dolphins. See, there are 3 dolphin spots on the board that you can visit, which, if you pay the given amount, you can travel 20 spaces, or 30 spaces if we're talking about the second dolphin, from the given spot. The first dolphin will carry you all the way to the wood boardwalk and drop you off right before the lucky space. The second dolphin will carry you all the way to these 3 crates. The third dolphin will carry you all the way to these 3 crates as well, but 1 space ahead of the drop-off point of the second dolphin. The price to ride a dolphin is determined by what place you're in. The second dolphin does a plus 10 on these prices since it's built different, traveling 30 spaces instead of 20. While the cost can be a bit harsh to those in higher placings, this does do a good job at evening out those doing better than others. However, since coins don't really matter when it comes to getting a star on this board, you don't really have anything to worry about when it comes to spending a lot, except for when it comes to purchasing items. Somewhat related to that, which dolphin is the best one to take? They each bring you 20 spaces closer to the end of the path, which is nearly a third of this 66 space board, but the difference between them is what spaces and events they are actually making you skip, similar to the chuckster happening from before. The first dolphin brings you past the first item shop, a fishing happening, the second dolphin, a DK/Bowser space, and a chuckster, which sounds like a lot, but honestly, this is a pretty sick skip overall. It places you just behind the lucky space, which is incredible, and you're only some spaces away from the third dolphin and an item shop, which are great options to choose from. If I can afford it, I'll almost always take the first dolphin here, since the spaces it skips aren't always required for my game, and the events it drops me next to are pretty fantastic for the most part. Nice. The second dolphin skips a DK/Bowser space, a chuckster, the lucky space, the third dolphin, another chuckster, the shipwreck happening, and another DK/Bowser space, which is a lot of skipping. The clear upside here is that you're going 30 spaces ahead instead of the usual 20, which is nearly half the spaces on this board. You've just got to determine whether or not anything in between is worth skipping over what we're about to discuss. The third dolphin skips an item shop, a chuckster, the shipwreck happening, in a DK/Bowser space, which ain't a lot for 20 spaces. The true value of taking this third dolphin is taking it after you've taken the first dolphin, given you have enough coins. If you're in first, then this maneuver will cost you 40 coins total, which sounds like a lot, but saving yourself 40 spaces out of the 66 on this board is incredible and saves you so much time. Even if you don't have 40 coins for this maneuver, you may still be able to pull it off, granted you're placing changes after paying 20 coins for the first dolphin. Imagine if you go from first to fourth place after paying, and now you only have to pay 5 coins for the third dolphin. That'd be pretty great, so don't overlook this play. I don't need to tell you how amazing the movement candies are on this board. Twice Candies and Thrice Candies will have you blasting ahead and rushing to the cap'n as fast as possible. Springo Candies, above all else, are extremely useful in letting you bounce to any player that's about to get a star themselves, and is a prime example of why you should learn how the timing of the dart wheel works here. Vampire Candies are not so useful here, but it's not like you can buy them anyways. Use them when a threat is approaching one of the dolphins to try and make a big play in hopes that they won't be able to afford it. What were the devs expecting really, letting you transform into a vampire in the broad daylight? Blowaway Candies can be just as useful as Springo Candies with their ability to make a sweeping impact on players' placements. Use one when you're nearing the end of the path to blow other players all the way back to the start. Thwomp Candies, just like Vampire Candies, aren't as useful. I wouldn't go out of my way to purchase one here, but if I had one in my inventory, then I'd try and obliterate someone's coins that's attempting to make any big plays with dolphins or getting a Springo Candy at an item shop. Duelo Candies can be great here, especially against players that are poor at duels since they don't have any junctions to take to run away from you. Feel free to have at them. Overall, Goomba's Booty Boardwalk has a decent amount of events that can affect your placement, but the main priority you need to have here is keeping your movement candies up at all costs. I say that for all boards, but it's extremely pivotal here to have the right candies in stock at the right times to both spring ahead when the opportunity arises or blow away your opponents to prevent them from getting the one piece they need for total victory. We found ourselves in King Boo's haunted hideaway. Do you have any idea what we're about to get ourselves into here? Well, to start things off simply, your goal is to reach King Boo and purchase a star from him for 10 coins. Pretty straightforward, right? Except that this board is unique from any other Mario Party board in the franchise, and that its layout is randomly generated each time you play. The map on this board, by the way, is unique as well, in that every room is hidden from your sight until entered, altogether resulting in a labyrinth of madness where players blindly move from room to room in a hopeful search for the one that King Boo resides in. And you might be thinking, okay Zoomzyke, well that seems tough to deal with, but once King Boo has been found after some turns, all you've got to do is just keep moving to him, right? Well, yeah. If it weren't for the fact that each time a player buys a star from King Boo, he'll send all players back to start and randomly regenerate the board for another round, which of course resets the map as well. And now you might be wondering, how do we even cover a board like this one, where each configuration is unique with zero consistency? It's impossible. Well, what do you think this series is about, dummy? We're here to crack this cookie case wide open, and let me tell you, there's a lot to crack open here. So stick with me as I first clarify that King Boo's room is not the only dead-end room you can visit in the mansion. There are also pitfall rooms that will cause you to be sent back to start. There's no way of telling whether a dead end will be King Boo or a pitfall. Keep that in mind as we move forward. Alright, here we go. Every configuration of King Boo's Haunted Hideaway will always be on either a 4x3 or a 3x4 grid, which I will henceforth refer to as a horizontal layout and vertical layout respectively. Given these layouts, each configuration will always have 12 rooms, one spot for each square on the grid. Each room on the grid must be a room you can enter. It is impossible for a room to be blocked off. So for example, this configuration cannot happen. Why? Because these two rooms cannot be entered. You have to be able to enter every room. Remember that. Another important detail is that if a room can connect to another room, it will. And one last thing, there will always be one dead-end room with King Boo in it, and 1 to 2 dead-end rooms with pitfalls. If you remember these details and know how to put them into practice, then you have an extreme edge over those that don't know. Let's put them into practice together with an example. The gates open and the game's about to start. One cool detail about finding King Boo is that you're shown the room he's in at the very beginning. The moment it cuts here, look for the stairs. In this example, the stairs are on the left. This means that the dead-end room that King Boo is in can only be entered from the left going right. So if we notice a little later on that we can enter a dead-end room heading up, left, or down, then that room does not contain King Boo. Keep in mind that this cheeky way of figuring out which direction you enter King Boo's room in only works for the first star, as you're not shown this clip of him whenever he shuffles the mansion. Alright, so from the start we can see that we're heading up. This doesn't really give us any information about what the board looks like, let alone if it's a horizontal layout or a vertical one. So let's see what's up here. Interesting, so we have a room that connects upward and to the right, but not to the left. Recall that every room must be enterable, and that if a room can connect to another room, it will. So why can't we go left here then? There are 3 possibilities. 1, the room to the left is the starting room, which obviously isn't the case since we just came from the starting room. 2, the room to the left is a dead end, and the reason we can't enter it is simply because its entrance is facing a different direction. Or 3, there is no room to the left and we're currently at the leftmost part of the map. It could be either 2 or 3, we won't really know until we get more information. We do know that the room to the right of us is not a dead end room since the pathway is coming towards us. In addition, the room above us can also not be a dead-end room, since if it was, then that would break Rule 1. All rooms in the mansion must be accessible, and hitting a dead end here makes it so we can't go anywhere else. This room only lets us go right. It, just like the last room, won't let us go left, which again means either that the room to the left is a dead end, or that there actually isn't a room to the left of us, and we're simply on the leftmost part of the map. An interesting question. Are there 2 dead-end rooms here, or are we simply on the left side of the map? Do you think that right now there is any way for us to tell? There actually is, and that'll be made clear when we start constructing our map. If this is a horizontal layout board, then the starting area must go at the bottom to make room for the rooms above it. We know these rooms can't be on the rightmost side of the board since they connect to rooms on the right that we haven't seen yet. If we assume that the reason why we can't see these two rooms on the left are because they're dead-end rooms, then we run into an obvious issue here. Assuming this board is a horizontal layout, these rooms are completely inaccessible, which breaks rule 1. All rooms must be accessible. Let's try a vertical layout then. Looking better here. The top dead-end room could theoretically be accessed from the top, but again we run into an issue, for with this layout, the bottom of the two dead-end rooms is inaccessible. What does this prove? That we are most definitely on the leftmost side of the board. Moving on, whoa, what a junction! With this, we can actually fill out a decent chunk of our map. From the start, it's now obvious that we're on a vertical layout since we can go 4 rooms high. Earlier, we didn't know if the room above this corner piece was a dead-end room or simply the corner of the map, but now that we know that there's a room to the top right of this corner piece, that means that there has to be a dead-end room above here. In addition, we know that this top middle room is not a dead end because it's the only possible route to the dead end we established here at the top left. We already knew this room in the middle wasn't a dead end room, but we can fill out what one of the paths are now with this information. So cool, we know where one of the dead end rooms are. There can only be at most 2 others left to discover. What's even better is that we know for a fact that this dead end room does not contain King Boo. Why? Because in order to enter it, you have to come in from the right. But as we saw in the earlier clip, you access his room by coming in from the left, as proven by the stairs here on the left. What this means is that his room is somewhere on the right side of the board. We have no way of knowing where exactly at the moment, but since we have the option of entering one of the rooms on the right side, let's take our chances and hope we're lucky. And he's not here, but with this, we now know exactly where he is. For starters, a pathway's coming in from above this room, so we know that this corner room can't be a dead end and connects like so. The room below us could be a dead end, but since we know that King Boo's room can only be accessed coming in from the left, the potential dead end down below us will most certainly be a pitfall. Let's hope it's not a dead end and that we're just sent to the left. Okay, nice, we got lucky. With this, we know that the current configuration of the board we're on only contains 2 dead ends, the one on the top left and the one on the bottom right, with the latter being King Boo's location. This is our finished map. So let's make our way to the bottom right corner and claim our star, thus causing King Boo to reset the configuration of the mansion. It is a lot to take in, but once you nail down the rules in your head, then figuring out the layout of the mansion as more information becomes available to you isn't actually all that hard, especially when you consider that other players are taking their turns too, entering rooms and allowing you to make better guesses as more of the map is uncovered. Oh, and me not saying the space count for the introduction of this board was on purpose, by the way. There is no exact number of blue, red, happening, or DK/Bowser spaces that configurations will always adhere to. They all vary, even the lucky space, which there could be potentially 0 of on the board. There can only be 1 at max though. The implication of these spaces varying gets strange when it comes to happening spaces, since sometimes you'll see all possible happening events on a single configuration, and other times you might see the same happening event multiple times, whereas a different happening event just isn't there. The configuration we just covered is actually missing one of the happening events itself, the chest happening, so you can't really make sweeping predictions about the board based on the spaces you've encountered, maybe small ones, but that's pretty much it. There will always be at least one Womp in a given configuration guarding one of the paths at a junction. You must pay the Womp a 10 coin fee to take the path it's guarding, and if you do so, he'll let you through and guard one of the other paths instead. If you know that the path he's guarding is the way to King Boo, and you can afford paying 10 coins followed by the 10 coins King Boo charges for the star, then pay the dude and go on ahead. But if you do not have enough coins to afford King Boo's star after paying this guy, then you'll just be sent back to start having not only shown everybody where King Boo is, but also having moved the Womp out of the way, making the path accessible without payment. Just keep an eye on how many coins you've got so you don't make this mistake. Landing on one of the happening spaces in front of a piranha plant will cause them to chew on you, taking away 10 coins. Can't say this is much of a fun space to land on, even if you're looking to up your happening count. If you know what's up ahead, then use it twice twice or thrice candy to skip it. Landing on the happening space next to the magic mirror will transport another player to the space with you, determined by the dart wheel. Man, I can't stress enough how important it is to practice timing the leftmost part of this thing. And man, can this happening save you in your time of need if you realize that you're going the wrong direction and a threat's closing in on a dead end that you're pretty sure belongs to King Boo. If you're positive the direction you chose is wrong, then move towards this happening in hopes of landing on it and nailing the player you desire. Landing on a happening space next to a chest will open it, giving you a piece of candy, 20 coins, or causing Boo to fly out and take 10 coins from you. The odds of each of these events happening are equal. If the candy giving event is selected, then, just like the fishing event from Goomba's Booty Boardwalk, it will have an equal chance of giving you any of the candies that can be found at the item shop, twice candies not included. This does include vampire candy, by the way, regardless of what turn it is. While it's nice to receive a free candy, it's a lot nicer to actually be able to choose which candy you want, since the distribution here, even though it's equal, isn't one I'm a fan of due to there being a high chance at you getting something other than a thrice candy or Springo candy. Not only that, but you have to bet on the 1 in 3 odds of the chest even giving you a candy to begin with. It could throw out 20 coins instead, or worse, take away 10 coins from you. I wouldn't alter my game plan in an attempt to land on or avoid this happening. It's more of a, if I land there, whatever happens kind of space. Landing on the happening space next to Mouse lets you steal candy, coins, or a star from another player via pinball. But don't worry, it's not rigged this time. Kind of. The launch power you give the ball will send it the exact same distance every time no matter what, given you wait for it to stop bouncing after you pull back. This detail alone is fantastic, because that makes this event completely timeable for what you want to steal. All you have to do is send the ball at full power the moment the result before the one you want lines up with the middle of the miniature mansion. So in this case, if I want to steal a star, I would wait until the piece of candy, which is the result before the star, is at the very middle, and then I send the ball. With this, I will land the ball into the star hole. Landing the ball in any other hole is just as easy. Just remember, line up the result before the one you want in the middle. Where the randomness comes in is who you end up stealing from. Unfortunately, the roulette above will spin a little bit or not so much at the end, preventing you from targeting certain players for a steal. This is a bummer, but getting to select what you steal is still great. If everyone has a star right now, then you know you're gonna get a star from this event. However, if only one player has a star, then you, of course, may land on a player without one, in which case Mouse tells you tough luck. The amount of coins you'll steal if you get that option is around 5 to 20. Placing doesn't really matter. Even if it did, the amount stolen here doesn't feel significant enough to warrant going for unless you really need some coins. And I mean really. Going for this option instead of the star one, even if only one other player has a star, feels like a waste. I'd take a 1 in 3 chance of stealing a star over some coins any day. The candy stealing option is easily the worst of the three though, since not only does this pinball event choose which player to steal a candy from at random, but the actual candy stolen from the player is determined at random too. I could only ever see myself going for this if a threat is about to make a critical move to secure their lead with a certain candy in their stock, but the odds of pulling off this kind of steal are just so low with all the uncertainties involved. Remember, there's no slow-go candy on this board. Landing on the DK space will cause the Great Ape to appear and use his platforms to block all pitfalls. The next player to then visit a pitfall will receive a free star from him and be sent back to the start. After this, all his platforms from each pitfall will be removed. This is another one of those DK events that can be amazing for other players when landed upon. Avoid this space at all costs if you know a threat's coming upon a pitfall. Alternatively, if you're about to reach a pitfall room, then landing here can actually be pretty great. You've just got to keep in mind that if any player reaches any pitfall, then the DK event will be called off and the pitfall you're headed towards will be nice and open for you to receive absolutely nothing. Use a twice or thrice candy to reach any of the DK rooms quicker in this case before anyone steals what's yours. Bowser's event works the same way, except he'll steal a star from you instead and send you back to the start via pit. If you have no stars, then he'll grant you 10 coins. This is a lot worse than simply running into a pitfall room, where nothing happens and you start over. Losing a star on a board that likes to shuffle around rooms at random is not fun. Sure, getting the hang of how this board works does does grant you a great advantage over other players, but players can just get really lucky with the paths they choose, and you want to hold on to as many stars as you can. If a Bowser event takes place, then be careful with where you move. Consider entering rooms that you know aren't dead ends, and wait for another player to activate the event first so that it can get called off. Using a twice or thrice candy at a time like this is not a good idea. Both the DK event and Bowser event will get called off if King Boo resets the mansion before anyone visits DK or Bowser, so keep that in mind. Landing on the lucky space will send you to the second floor of the mansion, where you've got a long path of blue spaces with 3 coins atop each of them. At the end of this path is a warp pipe which will take you directly to King Boo's room. This is all pretty great, but the downside is that if a different player reaches King Boo while you're in this lucky area, then you will get booted out and sent back to start just like the rest of the players. Unfortunately, the lucky area here is not immune to the reset, so if you manage to get lucky enough to enter the second floor and a player's really close to King Boo, then use a twice or thrice candy to blitz past all the spaces ahead of you and reach him first. These candies overall are pretty useful here in helping you navigate the mansion quickly and gaining information fast. This does in turn give your opponents information as well, but if they don't know the secrets about this board, then info about it will always be more useful to you than anyone else. If you know that the others are aware of how this board functions, then you've got a game of chicken on your hands, where you may be reluctant to take certain paths since you want other players to take them first to cure your doubts of what you think the layout is. If you're caught in this kind of game, then hold on to your twice and thrice candies and hope you roll low so that the other players can fill out the map first. Then, when you have a good idea of what the layout is, use one of the candies to burst ahead and towards one of the dead ends that hopefully contains King Boo. Although if we're talking about the first star, you should have a pretty good idea of where he is given you paid attention to the direction of the stairs. Springo candies can get you out of terrible situations, and trust me, you will run into them on this board where you can't guarantee everything. If another player enters the lucky area or is coming close to King Boo, then spring towards them and secure the star for yourself. The versatility of this candy on this board is magnificent, so pick it up whenever you're able and strive to have a good balance of Springos, twice, and thrice candies in your inventory. Cash Zap, Vampire, and Thwomp candies are great at reducing coins, but don't help you out in navigating the board at all. For this reason, I don't prioritize them at the item shop in the slightest. Bit-sized candies are great for coins and not much else. If you get a configuration with a lot of womps, then you may be thankful to pick this candy up. Otherwise, I hope for something else to munch down on. The Duelo candy can be fantastic here if, despite your efforts, King Boo has eluded you. Overall, King Boo's haunted hideaway is a labyrinth of madness for those blind to its tricks, and a puzzle just waiting to be solved for those that are willing to see through the chaos. Welcome aboard to Shy Guy's Perplex Express. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it has the least amount of blue spaces at 23, and the least amount of spaces out of all the boards in this title at 44. The objective here is to reach the front of the train, where you can purchase a star for 20 coins. This setup is very similar to the Boardwalk we just talked about, what with a straight path with no junctions, except this time you actually have to pay for the star. Keep that difference in mind. The board consists of multiple train cars connected to one another, which is very important when considering this happening space at the end of this red carpet, also another happening on a green train. Landing on either will cause Magic Koopa to appear, who will use his magic to move the front car of the train to the very back, and move the other cars upward to the front. This means that simply memorizing the placements of where all the spaces are on the board won't do. You have to associate the spaces with their train cars to get a better feel for where everything is. For a pivotal space that could change the outcome of the game, such as the lucky space, could be at the start of the board or at the end. To help you decide whether or not to purposely land on this space with a Slogo candy, keep in mind that this board not only consists of players moving through the train cars, but atop them as well. So if there's a player about to reach the Shy Guy at the front of the train, but a huge threat is on top of that very same train car after having just purchased a star, then how will that affect each of these players' games? To answer, the player inside this front car will be hurt a ton as they now have to travel through all the cars again, but the threat on the roof will be helped a ton since they've skipped having to run across all the roofs of the train cars. Focus on where the threat is when deciding whether or not you should go for this move. If you land on the happening space in front of Holly Koopa, she'll offer to buy one of your candies for how much it costs the reverse price of your placing at the item shop. A Thrice candy, for example, is 20 coins for first and second place and 15 coins for third and fourth place. If you're in first and Holly offers to buy your Thrice candy, then she'll give you 15 coins for it should you choose to accept. If you were in first or second place when buying the candy you're about to give away, then you'd be outright losing coins in this exchange. But that's not entirely terrible if you realize that the candy in your inventory is just taking up space and isn't really doing you any favors at the moment. Selling off your Twice, Thrice, or Slow-Go candies is almost never recommended, whereas more situational candies here, such as Bolo and Wiggly, are better to pawn off given you're getting what you want out of it. Unfortunately, you can't choose which candy to sell to her as she'll be choosing from your stock at random, but if you only have one candy, then hey, it's as predictable as ever. The happening space in front of the Shy Guy Chef's heat vent will suck you up to the roof of the train and vice versa if you land on the happening space next to the vent on the roof. How much of an impact this event has on you will depend on where the car currently is. If it's at the very back of the train, then taking this happening doesn't really matter since the difference between the spaces is negligible. But if you take the event upward at the front of the train, then you skip the star when you were only a few spaces away. On the other hand, if you take the vent down after having just visited the conductor, then you could visit the conductor again your very next turn. Look out for this golden opportunity and aim to use a slow-go here should it arise. On a board where the cars can shift around or players can pull shenanigans on you to screw you over terribly, getting multiple stars in consecutive turns is outstanding. If you can't slow-go here and you're concerned about taking the vent up and skipping the star, then use your Twice candy or Thrice candy to avoid the worst case scenario from happening. Landing on this happening space atop the green car will cause the conductor to ask for your assistance in finding the character that stole Holly's candy. He'll say that either Bandit or Mouse did it. You must then choose a car where you think the culprit is. Thankfully, they both suck at hiding. For starters, they can never be in the same car, so if you're looking for Mouse and you see Bandit in one car, you know that Mouse isn't there. Not like this matters all that much considering that each of their possible hiding positions in each car is fixed, and all but one of these fixed hiding positions can be seen through the windows. So all you have to do when activating this event is simply look through the windows of each car for the culprit, and when you spot them, select that car. If you're sure that you can't find them through the windows of any of the cars, then they're in the yellow car, the kitchen one. If you're correct, then you'll receive 20 coins. If you're wrong, then you get nothing. A pretty easy event once you know the trick to it. If you land in the happening space atop the blue train, then coins will pop out of the engine and rain coins on any players on top. Players in first and second place will get 2 to 5 coins, whereas players in third and fourth will get 5 to 10 coins. This amount is frankly abysmal no matter what placing you're in, and is not a happening I'd shoot for under any circumstances. There are just too many better events that I'd want to use a slow-go on, not to mention that this event even helps out other players in some cases more than you. I wouldn't even use a Twice or Thrice candy to try and roll past it unless I needed a threat to not gain a certain amount of coins. Other than particular situations and upping my happening count, it's basically an invisible space to me. If you land in the happening space atop the red car, then every player on the roof of a car will get hit by a bar, causing them to each lose 5 coins and get sent back to the start. Other than losing 5 coins, there's no real downside to activating this event if you're the only one affected by it, considering it essentially launches you ahead in spaces. It can be a bit inconsequential if you activate this when already close to the start, or a little bad if you were planning on slow going the event, but otherwise it ain't a bad happening for what it's worth. Where it can be terrible for your game is if you land on this thing when you're trying to prevent a threat from gaining another star. If they just purchased one and you're about to reach start, then you'd be helping them go around the train faster while you don't gain much at all. If this is your current situation, then roll multiple dice blocks past this sucker. In the case of this event helping you, I wouldn't recommend slow going onto it and would instead save it for the event happening once you get close, or the DK/Bowser space. Speaking of which, landing on the DK space will cause the head of the train to swap out with Donkey Kong's barrel car. Don't ask where the head of the train went. Whoever makes it to DK first will get a free star. Almost every time in the series that you land on the DK space, you will get something out of it. Sometimes, yeah, a multiplayer multiplayer DK minigame will pop up, and at worst case scenario, you get 0 coins and your opponents get some coins. But here, you could make it so a threat that would have normally not been able to buy a star because they couldn't afford it, now able to gain one for free from DK. It almost feels weird to call it a DK space because of this effect that will, frankly, often not be helpful to you. Skip this space with a twice or thrice if it help out an opponent, or purposely land on it with a slow go if you know it'll help you out. Just keep in mind the candies that the other players behind you have, because this board is small and only takes a measly roll of 23 to go from the start all the way to the conductor. If you land on a Bowser space, then Bowser will attach his train to the front, the Bad Breath Express. If you happen to visit him, then he'll steal a star from you. If you visit him when you don't have any stars, he'll gift you 10 coins and will still leave. If you do have a star but no coins, then you will still lose a star. I'd argue that the Bowser space here is more useful for you to take advantage of than the DK space. If a threat's just about to reach the conductor, then land on the Bowser space using a slow go and you can minus 1 star from them. Heck, you could do this multiple times and really upset someone. It ain't that hard to do considering this logo has a 30% chance of appearing in the first half of the game at the item shop, so stock up on them whenever you can. For when you do, you can land on the illustrious Lucky Space, where you'll be let off at Payday Way Station, with a short path of blue spaces with a free star at the end. After getting the star, you'll be brought back to the start of the train. This Lucky Space is only as useful as the distance it is away from the conductor. If the train that contains it is right next to the conductor, then there honestly isn't much of a point of using a slow go to purposely land here for a star, since you can easily just roll to the conductor instead. Yeah, you can get some coins out of the blue spaces, but that isn't really worth the slow go usage. When I would land on this space is if the train containing it is closer to the start, where you can get a star a lot earlier than if you tried landing on this space when the car is next to the conductor. Bit-sized candies are a sweet pickup to get your coins up, but just be careful when you use it here, for the Wiggly candy may steal it from you. Bolo candy is not worth buying here for the higher placings, but definitely for the lower since there are only 5 coins for them. If you see this thing in the item shop for this price, then feel free to grab it if you already have some movement candies in stock. Due to this board being a straight line, and a small one at that, there's a good chance that you'll find an opportunity to steal 10 coins from multiple players at once. Wiggly candies are especially useful for stealing slow-go candies in particular to prevent opponents from screwing you over via the Bowser space. Thwomp candies are ones I appreciate when they show up, but not ones I'll go out of my way to purchase due to how common it is for players to get stars via other methods for free here. Duelo candies won't find you moving very far since this board is tiny and will instead result in you often quickly landing on the space another opponent is on, which might be what you want. If you're fantastic at dueling, then take your pals here. Overall, Shy Guy's Perplex Express is a unique board where you've got to keep in mind which happening spaces belong to which train cars, lest you forget which space activates what. Check the map often so that you're aware of what spaces are next and where all the players are, so you can know when to activate certain events and when not to. We've driven into Koopa's Tycoon Town. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it has the most lucky spaces at 2, complete with 2 lucky areas as well. This board's gimmick is the same as that of Windmillville from Mario Party 7, although with some differences. Players invest coins into hotels, and whoever has the most amount of coins invested into one will own it and receive the amount of stars that's depicted on the front. This means that you can steal stars away from another player if you invest more coins into a hotel than the owner, and same goes vice versa if another player manages to invest more coins than you into your hotel. Players cannot invest the same amount of coins into a hotel as one another. When a player invests 100 coins into a hotel, then no other players can make any more investments, since 100 is the max amount. You pretty much block any threats from taking the hotel back from you if you manage to invest this many coins, with only 2 ways for someone to reduce your coins invested that we'll talk about in a bit. Where this gimmick really diverges from that of Windmillville is how the amount of stars each hotel gives players for owning them is determined. Here, all 5 hotels are 1-star hotels. Even though the map I'm showing depicts them at different sizes, they all start as 1-stars. Once a hotel has accumulated 20 coins collectively, so adding up all players' investments, coins, then it'll become a 2-star hotel, and whoever's the owner of the hotel will gain 2 stars from it instead of 1. After a hotel accumulates 50 coins collectively, then it'll become a 3-star hotel. This is a huge change to how this gimmick plays and is something you have got to keep in mind at all times. If you're nearing the end of the game and it's absolutely hopeless to pass up a threat's coin amount in a hotel, then don't invest into it. You'll just bring the hotel closer towards receiving an upgrade and benefiting the threat who's currently the owner of it. Alternatively, you could bait other players into investing coins into a hotel that you own so that it can upgrade and grant you more stars. Granted, you're able to keep ownership of it. If you land in the happening space next to start, then you'll be taken by a taxi to one of the 5 hotels at random. And I mean random. I wouldn't slow go onto this happening unless, well, pretty much any hotel I could be randomly transported to would be great for my game, and that won't always be the case. Sometimes you can be transported to one of your own hotels, away from all the action, and end up having your time wasted, so make sure that the odds are at least in your favor before deciding to purposely land here. Also keep in mind the hotel right in front of start that you're about to visit, and whether or not it'd be better to roll the dice on randomly visiting a different one instead of a guaranteed shot at visiting it. Landing on one of the 2 happening spaces in front of alleys may cause Bandit to appear. He will not appear if there are no hotels to steal any coins from, or if there's just a singular coin investment. If he does appear, then he will visit the hotel with the highest gap between the largest and second largest investment. So for example, if there was a hotel where the largest investment was 20 coins and the second largest was 10, then he would steal from the latter hotel over the one where the largest investment is 50 and the second largest is 45. If multiple hotels have the same largest gap, then he'll select between them at random. He will always steal from the player that currently owns the hotel. The player that landed on this space is ignored in all of these calculations, by the way. He will steal just enough coins from a player to put them at 1 coin above the next player's investment, although this may not be possible if it would require stealing more than 30 coins, since he can only steal a maximum of 30. His insistence on keeping the coin amount of whomever he steals from just 1 coin above the next person means that he can't change the hotel owner, nor can he make it so 2 players will tie in investments. However, what Bandit here can do is cause a hotel's total investment to go under 50 or 30, which can result in the hotel downsizing and causing the owner of the hotel to have their star count reduced accordingly. After he makes his steal, he'll give the coins to you. One other cool detail about it though is how it can reduce a player from having a 100 coin lockdown on a hotel. Honestly, if someone's got that many coins in one of them, then it's probably not worth trying to fight them on and to just go for a different one. But if you need to get a hold of it, then land on this space to bring it down. If you land on the happening space in front of the Koopa shop, you'll end up throwing a dart onto a dart wheel. If you manage to land the dart on your face, then you get 10 coins. Anytime a player misses, the grand prize, which starts at 10 coins, will go up by 10 coins to a maximum of 60 coins. Each time a player wins this happening, they'll receive the jackpot amount and the amount will reset back to 10 coins. Funnily enough, what number place you're in is how many of your faces is on the dart wheel, making it more difficult for first place and a lot easier for fourth. Regardless, the timing is the same on this dart wheel as it is for the others. I'd purposely land on this space with a slow go only if I'm desperate for coins or if the jackpot is getting pretty high. Even if you have a ton of coins already and don't need the jackpot, sometimes it's better to land on this space anyways, if only to prevent a threat from landing on it and obtaining a ton of coins to invest into hotels. If you land on one of the 2 happening spaces next to the construction site, then the Koopa there will randomly give you 10 or 20 coins. Pretty straightforward and altogether not a huge deal. Don't use your slow go here unless you need some extra change. Landing on a DK space will cause DK to pull up and invest 20 to 30 of his own coins into one of the hotels at random. Activating this event late into the game when the owner is too far away from their hotel to change it back can easily result in you clutching the win. This is a fantastic space to use your slow go on, and thus it may be one that other players target as well. Should you see someone attempt it, try to land on it first to switch it to a Bowser space instead. When he pulls up, he'll arrive at a random hotel and steal 10 coins from everyone's investments there, and yes, he can reduce the total amount of coins invested in a hotel to 0, causing there to be no owner, just like at the start of the game. This event has potential to be positive or negative depending on which hotel he visits. Try your best to remember how many coins each hotel has, and if there's a higher probability of your opponents getting screwed over instead of you. Above all else, the 2 high priority spaces you want to use a slow go to land on are the lucky spaces. They will each take you to their own lucky areas, which each have a secret 3-star hotel just waiting for you to invest some coins into it. These 2 hotels are immune from all events and cannot be tampered with whatsoever, meaning that any player that invests 100 coins into them will 100% guarantee they gain the stars from them for the rest of the game. In addition, since they start as 3-star hotels, you can invest just a single coin for 3 stars and nothing more. They will not grow if you invest any more coins into them and will instead simply remain as 3-star hotels. They are extremely powerful and often decide games on this board, which is why you should be holding on to your slogos to prioritize reaching each of these 2 hotels in the game and investing a fair amount of coins into each of them. It will be very tempting to invest a minuscule amount of coins into these 3-star hotels, banking on the possibility that no one will get the chance to visit them, but this is a fool's errand. Odds are someone will be fortunate enough to land in a lucky space with their basic dice roll or just slogo onto it. At the very least, put in the amount of coins that you gain from walking atop the blue spaces. This will prevent any players with 0 coins that visit this lucky area from immediately taking away your 3-star hotel. Once you put in that base amount, put in as many coins as you can that won't hurt your overall game. A good rule of thumb is to keep your coin total at around 20 so that you can still afford any candies that you might need. The junctions on this board will vary in their usefulness depending on how many coins are invested in each hotel, but it's still good to get a feel for what spaces are where. The first junction you'll visit is on the left, with the right path granting you access to an item shop and the top path granting you access to a hotel. If you're aiming to land where they converge, then both paths are the same amount of spaces, meaning you've got to determine if candy or investing is more important to you right now. If you're at the start of the game and can afford to buy a slogo at your placing, then go right and hope they have it. If they do, grab it and take the next junction up, purposely landing on the lucky space here to get an early lead in the game. If you can't afford a slogo yet, then head up on this junction instead and invest a few coins in the hotel just to get started. Don't put too many in here because you might end up getting lucky and land on the lucky space ahead. This junction here asks you to either go up or right, and I often will go up here if only to hope I land on the lucky space or the happening that lets me steal another player's investments. There's also a candy giving space on this path, along with another hotel and the construction happening that grants coins. If I'm being frank, there's a little reason to go right on this junction instead, unless you need to take a quicker route towards any of the other hotels on the board. But maybe I'm being a bit too harsh. Let's look at this junction here, which lets you go either down or to the right. It's clear as day that the upside of going down isn't to hope you land on any noteworthy spaces, but simply to skip all the spaces on the right and loop back around quicker, which is going to depend on your situation. Heading right leads you to the dart happening, which may be worth landing on if the jackpot is high, the construction happening, which is always nice, the DK/Bowser space, which we know how powerful they can be, an item shop, and a hotel. Wow, that's a lot! If you're thinking of going down on this junction, then you'd better have a good reason for it, because you'd be skipping out on a lot of stuff here. Make sure you aren't landing on anything great or that you don't have potential to land on something great. It'd be a shame if you have a slogo in stock ready to be used on a DK space just for you to take the shortcut here and miss out on the opportunity. For Chump Charity, as stated before, the player in last place will be gifted 30 coins. If you find yourself in this position, then get to the nearest item shop as quickly as you can, grab a slogo candy, and make your way to the lucky spaces where you can invest these coins well. Twice candies and thrice candies are great for moving from hotel to hotel, but there aren't really any terrible spaces to skip this time around. Don't get me wrong, rolling multiple dice blocks on a board where you may need to rush to a certain hotel at the end game is pretty nice, but I wouldn't place as much emphasis on these items as much as I would the slogo, which I pair it as the #1 candy for this board, bar none. It will grant you access to the lucky areas as well as the impactful happening events found here. Springo candies can't be bought here, but are just absolutely phenomenal. You could hold on to one, wait for a player to land on a lucky space, and then leap to their area, investing just more than the coins they have to own one of the 3-star hotels. If someone has a Springo candy themselves and you're about to go to the lucky area, then look at both of your coin totals to see if they can invest more than you. If they can, then purposely landing on the lucky space at this time may inadvertently help an opponent gain 3 stars, so be very careful. Cash Zap candies show up often at the item shop, so if you see someone with one that knows how to time the dart wheel, then consider investing most of your coins into the nearest hotel so that they don't zap away half of them in an instant. If they don't know how to time the dart wheel, then you could chance that they'll just land their dart on another player or that they won't target you altogether. Its price is a little high here, especially for a board like this one, and is only a candy I'd buy if a threat just has too many coins. Vampire candies are fantastic at rounding up tons of players' coins all for yourself and can have a massive impact given the right situation. No matter what price you buy one for, you will gain value should you know how to time the dart wheel appropriately, unless one of the players doesn't have any coins, in which case just hold on to your vampire candy until the time is right. Bit-sized candies are a lovely drop from candy giving spaces when you happen to pick one up, but a terrifying one if a threat gets their hands on it. Unfortunately, you can't steal it away or do pretty much anything to a threat on this board to prevent them from using this candy. Your only real option is stealing coins from them using the vampire candy or cash zapping their wallet away. Bolo candies are okay here given you're in the right situation to use one, but otherwise I'm not buying any from an item shop. Overall, excelling at Koopa's Tycoon Town greatly relies on your ability to remember how many coins players have invested into each hotel and slow-go candies. Use these suckers to ensure you land on both lucky spaces throughout the game so that you can lock down the 3-star hotels, as well as land on the many spaces that alter coin values. You've been pulled into Bowser's Warped Orbit. Here's the space lineup. Out of all the boards, it has the most amount of happening spaces at 10. The gimmick is star stealing, similar to that of previous titles, except instead of using chain chomps to steal stars from other players, here we use the Bullet Bill candy and Bowser candy to pass by players, thereby stealing a star or 2 stars from them respectively. In addition, the Bullet candy rolls 3 dice blocks, whereas the Bowser candy rolls 2, resulting in, as we discuss in the items section, a situation where you have to pick and choose whether you want the less risky 1-star stealing candy or the more risky 2-star stealing one. As we go over the board's events, you'll get a good idea of when to use each one. While it may look like this board has junctions, it basically doesn't. Each time you reach one of the 2 pathways will open up to you at random. Yes, random. It's completely random, no changing it, no predicting it. It's just something we've got to deal with, unfortunately. You could be chasing down a player just for them to enter one of these 2 pathways, resulting in you possibly using one of your star-stealing candies and being sent on the wrong path, without getting to make a steal. Alternatively, if you're about to reach one of these junctions while a player is hot on your tail, then you essentially turn their odds of catching you into a 50-50, which, although not foolproof, is a whole lot better than your stuff getting stolen guaranteed. Use twice candies to put yourself in these 50-50 situations as often as you can whenever you see a player behind you ready to make a steal. This happening space right after the item shop here will cause Bowser to come down and chase all players he comes across around the board in a complete loop, choosing the junctions at random and dropping them down onto the happening space. The only way to not get affected by this event when someone lands on it is to be in one of the junction's 2 pathways and hope Bowser visits the one that you aren't in. Otherwise, everyone will end up on the same space by the end. Under normal circumstances, an event like this one would end up being pretty dumb, seemingly wasting everyone's time. But in a place like this, where it's star stealing galore, bringing everyone to the same space is an amazing move. You could slow go to purposely land here, your turn ends, and then after everyone takes their turns, well, look at that! They're all ahead of you now in a great position for you to use a Bullet Bill or Bowser candy to steal some stars. The downside to this move is the position that the happening space is in. It's right behind a junction, so if players just perform a regular dice roll, then it's possible they'll land within one of the 2 paths, giving you a 50-50 chance on nailing certain players. What cures this problem is the event that activates from 4 other happenings, located here in the middle of a junction and item shop, here next to a candy space, and here with 2 of them side by side. Landing on any of these will cause Bowser to reverse the direction players move on the board. By the way, the board will always start in clockwise direction. This event is another one to aim for with your slow go, for it can easily turn a terrible situation into an amazing one. Imagine if there's 3 players right behind you, ready to annihilate your stars one after another. If you land on one of these happenings, then you can reverse the flow of the board and put yourself in an incredible position to not lose multiple stars to other players, but gain multiple stars from other players. A true reversal of fortune. The looping Bowser event we just talked about benefits from this as well, since moving counterclockwise here puts players much further away from the safety of a junction, so if they don't have any movement candies to help them as means of escape, then you'll be in a fantastic position to take advantage. It should go without saying that you should never purposely land on a reversal happening just to up your happening count. These are just way too powerful to land on willy-nilly, especially because your situation isn't the only one you have to consider. Look at the map and see where everyone is, including the threat. If they're about to get stolen from, then let it happen instead of reversing directions. That'll just help them out. Landing on the happening space next to Magic Koopa will cause him to shuffle everyone's candies around. Nice and simple. This event can be fantastic if a threat's accumulated a lot of star-stealing candies, whereas everyone else has not. It can balance things out a bit and prevent them from snowballing a lead. Unfortunately though, this happening space is located in one of the junction's paths, so if you want to use a slow-go candy to land on it, then you've got a 50-50 shot at doing so, even if you time your dice block properly. There's only one space behind the happening as well, so you can't even hope to land a little before it either. And if you do choose to go for it and get sent to the other route, then you'll land on a red space instead, which ain't too bad because the red space bonus star exists, but it just feels bad, you know? Regardless, if the threat looks like they're about to snowball that bad and you don't have any candies other than a slow go, then going for this move isn't a bad one, it's just a lot more situational. Landing on one of the 4 happening spaces in front of the tubes will force you to travel through the tube to reach the direct opposite side of the board, always collecting 20 coins along the way, no matter what place you're in. Don't worry about where the tubes are currently facing. Even if you land on one of these happening spaces while the tube isn't there, it'll simply turn towards you and suck you in like normal. As you can imagine, these tubes are fantastic runaway tools. If reversing directions or Bowser looping is out of the question, then attempt to activate one of these events to travel quite as far as you possibly can to the direct opposite side of the board. Of course, before doing this kind of move, you need to consider whether or not you'll be in a better situation or worse situation than before. To figure that out, take a look at where exactly you'll be dropped off. You can see here that each happening that's on the main route will drop you off onto a happening that's within one of the junction's paths and vice versa. The former is a great move a lot of the time since it forces players to take the 50-50 to steal from you. The latter is more situational since you're giving up the safety of a junction path to move to the main route on the board where other players don't have to worry about rolling a 50-50 to steal from you. While upping your happening count for the potential bonus star is awesome, it's just not worth making a terrible move over, and you may be better off purposely landing on one of the spaces ahead of one of these happenings to stay within the safety of the junction paths instead. Landing on the DK space will result in DK flying in from space and granting you a free star. Not bad. One of the DK/Bowser spaces is within a junction path and the other is on the main route. Slow going for this event surprisingly may not be the best move all too often. I've seen players slow themselves down to land here just for the star they just received to get stolen from the player behind them. Frankly, it's a lot better to slow go onto a happening space that'll assist you in stealing a star from another player than simply gaining a star independent of another player. Speaking of stealing, landing on a Bowser space will cause him to drop on by and steal a star from you. If you happen to have no stars, then he'll gift you 10 coins instead. You might think that there is absolutely no reason to land on this space whatsoever, but if you only have 1 star left and you don't want a threat to get another, then you could purposely land on the Bowser space to lose it to Bowser so that the threat doesn't steal it from you. It may be seen as a pretty salty move, but hey, whatever you can do to make sure they don't extend their lead. This board's lucky area that the lucky space brings you to is arguably the least powerful one in the game. There are 3 candies on the path, and each candy will either be a Bullet Bill candy or Bowser candy, essentially fully stocking up your inventory so that you can steal candies from other players. After reaching the end of this lucky area, you'll be dropped right back off at the lucky space, free to take your remaining moves. The problem here is if you already have some of these candies in your inventory. At worst, you could be receiving 0 candies, and at best, you could be nabbing 3. Due to the fact that the Bullet Bill and Bowser candies skip these candy giving spaces, you can't even use one that's already in your inventory and stock up once more. You instead have to simply run by the candy giving spaces like normal. That isn't to say this lucky area is absolutely terrible. I mean, yeah, stocking up can be great if you have nothing, and the bonus coins from here are nice as well, but I don't really struggle with keeping my candy inventory up on this board enough to warrant purposely landing on this lucky space. There are just too many happening events that are much more worth it to land on to benefit your game. One thing you could do while in this area is stall. If you notice that some players are about to pass the lucky space, then use a slow go to keep yourself in the lucky area a little longer, and once the players pass the lucky space, use a Bullet Bill or Bowser candy, return to the main board, and hit him with a surprise attack. Talking about the junctions may seem rather silly due to their random nature, but hey, the spaces there might be effective enough to the point that you'll take a 50-50 shot of landing on them using a slow go. This junction's outer path has a DK space and candy giving space, which is pretty nice overall. It's a little longer than the inner route, but in some cases that can be amazing if you're trying to escape from another player. The inner route itself does have the tube happening, which can assist even better in escaping from players behind you. This junction's outer path also has a candy giving space with nothing else really of note. The other path has a Magic Koopa happening, I suppose, but overall I'd say this is the most boring of all the junction paths. This junction's outer path has the lucky space we just talked about, as well as a candy giving space, which is cool, but again, the lucky space just ain't worth landing on this time around for the most part. Twice candies can be pretty useful in running away from players or heading towards them, but it's just better to use the actual attacking candies instead. Only reason you'd use it twice here is if you wanted to move a lot of spaces without skipping candy giving spaces or item shops, or just because you don't have enough coins to afford the attacking items. Slow go candies are incredible here, as they almost always are. There is absolutely no shortage of incredible moves for you to make with them to screw with your opponents. Honestly, slow go may be the only candy worth buying on this board. Bullet Bill and Bowser candy show up from candy giving spaces super often as it is, and if you're desperate to have one in your inventory, then granted you have enough coins, there will always be at least one available at the item shop. Vampire candy? I honestly just never would really use this thing here. I don't even know why it's here. Stealing coins from other players is cool, I guess? Maybe if a threat's close to an item shop, you can steal just enough coins to knock him down a peg, but other than that, there is really no reason to grab a vampire candy over a slow go. Overall, Bowser's Warped Orbit is a wacky game of tag where you have to pay close attention to where players are and whether or not they have a blue candy in stock. Always make sure you have a slow go as often as you can so that you can activate the mini events which can turn the tides of the game in your favor. This title has 69 minigames that all have a chance to pop up in party mode. 61 if repeated duel minigames are not counted. There's 18 4-player minigames, 9 1v3 minigames, 10 2v2 minigames, 5 battle minigames, and 27 duel minigames, 19 if repeated duel minigames are not counted. Unlike previous Mario Party titles, this one does not show the controls for the minigame you're playing when you pause, meaning it's incredibly important that you memorize the controls for each minigame before going into them. Alternatively, if you're feeling a little evil, this means that starting the minigame without your opponents getting a chance to brush up on the controls would put them at a disadvantage. But that's mean, and you're not mean, I think. 4-player minigames, Alpine Assault. Snowboard down the slope while avoiding obstacles. The player who crosses the finish line first wins. If 2 or 3 players cross the finish line at the same time, they win together. But if all 4 do, it's a tie. If 5 minutes passes without any player reaching the end, it's also a tie. The layout of this minigame is the same every time, so practice this one well, I mean it. Bumping into someone or getting bumped into moves you more than you might expect, resulting in you either crashing into a wall and losing your momentum, or hopefully causing that to happen happen to your opponents. If you're close to someone, then you're better off turning into them to cause a crash to occur on their end instead of hoping that they don't do the same to you or just accidentally moving into you. This is especially important at the beginning, where if you're on the end, it's easy for the player in the middle to take advantage and immediately turn your direction, so preemptively move towards the middle to avoid a catastrophe. Ideally, you want to be ahead of everyone to avoid these extraneous factors, looking ahead for snowmen on the course and carefully tilting your Wii remote enough to avoid them, but not so much that you head straight into the walls. If you press A or B when going off a ramp, you'll rotate in midair and will get a speed boost upon landing. So line yourself up when you see a ramp and work on timing your button press as soon as you're about to leave it. Most of the ramps are safe to leap off of, but this yellow one here closer to the end can nail you right into a snowman if you're not careful, so come at an angle facing more to the right to avoid this fate. The final ramp is wide and open, with enough room for all players to jump off it at once, but there's one lone snowman in the middle right next to the finish line, so be wary as you approach him as to not throw the minigame at the very end. If you're ahead of someone and they're catching up on your rear, then cut them off so they bump into you. At the Chomp Wash, scrub all the paint off the chain chomp. If multiple players finish at the exact same time, the winner is determined by port priority. If no one wants to wash off their chain chomp after 5 minutes, it's a tie. All players receive the same spots of paint. There are 5 spots of paint on each chain chomp, and when you clean off one spot, the chain chomp will automatically turn to where another one is for you to clean. Whoever cleans off all 5 spots of paint wins. Do not shake your Wiimote in large sweeping motions. You want to do extremely fast small motions as you shake it. For all intents and purposes, it's kind of like a button masher but for motion controls, so ensure that you're shaking it super fast and have at it. Crank to rank. Turn the crank to raise the flag to the top. The flag doesn't rise unless you crank in the correct direction. If no one gets their flag to the top within 5 minutes, it's a tie. If multiple players reach the top at the exact same time, the winner is chosen at random. The hint was serious about that correct direction business. You have to swing your Wiimote, notably the tip of it, in extremely fast small clockwise motions. Merely swinging it left and right is not good enough, so don't try and cheese it. Make sure that you're aiming your Wiimote directly at the sensor bar and doing your speedy rotations around it for maximum accuracy. Practice these little spins in whatever hand position is most comfortable for you, and you'll see your flag rise faster than the rest. If you're playing with people who don't know any better and didn't see the hint in the instructions, then you could tell them that they've got to swing the Wiimote counterclockwise, but they might take a swing at you if you try this. Flip the chimp. Get your monkey to climb the highest. Flip them to avoid the falling coconuts. Multiple players can win, including everyone. Getting hit by a coconut will knock your monkey down by a bit, wasting time. There's no pattern to when the coconuts fall. They could keep alternating or only fall down one side. You never truly know. What is consistent is that all players receive the same layout of falling coconuts, so no complaining. When it comes to flipping the chimp, you've got to swing your Wiimote to the right or left to get your monkey to switch to that respective side. Doing it slow will result in nothing happening. These coconuts can really catch you off guard, so you want to ensure that you do a super quick motion to save as much time as possible. Keep your eyes glued to the top of the screen where the coconuts are falling. When you see one start falling down the side your monkey is on, immediately switch, rinse, and repeat. In the nick of time, turn the clock's hands to match the image. Whoever gets 3 matches first wins. If multiple players match the image at the exact same time, the person who gets the point is selected at random. If after 10 rounds, no player has reached 3 points, it's a tie, even if one player is ahead in points. The minute hand moves much faster than the hour hand. Keep in mind that turning the Wiimote 90 degrees one direction will cause the hands to turn the fastest they can go. Any more than 90 degrees and you may see the hands actually slow down or stop entirely since your input will no longer be registering. Ensure that you don't overdo it and have this 90-degree limit in your head when moving the hands to match the middle. Unfortunately, if you manage to get the hands to pass the matching image, then they will not stop on their own. You have to slow them down and get a steady alignment for it to count as a point. So when you notice that you're about to make a match, carefully tilt your Wiimote face up to ensure you nab the point before the others. If you slow down too early, then it's no sweat, just bring the hands a little closer to where they need to be. Kartastrophe. Finish first in a 2-lap kart race race against your foes. If multiple carts cross the finish line at the same time, the winner is chosen at random. It's the same course every time, so feel free to practice this one. You may need to, considering the controls can be a bit wonky. Avoid running into other players. This will reduce your speed, but more importantly, will cause your turns to go all over the place, which can be a bit hard to recover from. On the first turn, stay close to the corner and tilt your Wiimote 90 degrees to the left for the sharpest turn possible. This can be difficult considering all the players are close to you at this point, but do your best to replicate this maneuver even if you're a little further away from the corner. Regardless, once you're through with the turn, make sure you straighten yourself out quickly or else you'll lose time driving the wrong way. On the second turn, rinse and repeat what you did before. If you pulled off the earlier turn well, it's likely the other players are further behind you, allowing you more leeway to pull this off. Just like before, even out once you're done to save time. On the third turn, you again want to round it tightly, but the moment you're through with the turn, immediately tilt your Wiimote to the right 90 degrees. This is because the fourth turn comes immediately after, and it's not nice. If you turn too late, then you'll end up in the grass here, which will lose you speed. If you turn too early, then you'll hit the wall and run the risk of losing the minigame altogether. You'll know you turn at a good time when you make this right turn completely, or if you merely bump the edge of the wall, which isn't a big deal since your cart will continue going around it. This is the part of the course players struggle on the most, so if there's any section I recommend you practice to make perfect, it's this one. After you're through with it, you're given a U-turn to the left, so don't get thrown off by having to turn longer than what you've been used to. The final turn is like the first couple you did, with a sharp curve to the left. Letting go of accelerate will result in you slowing down, whereas braking will stop your speed completely. Braking is completely unnecessary as long as you complete the course the way I described. The only moment where I can see this being needed is if this difficult part of the course wasn't maneuvered correctly and you're about to run into a wall or straight into the grass. Other than that, there's little reason to purposely slow down since there aren't any surprising obstacles that you've got to avoid out of nowhere. You can screw over other players by purposely running into them if they're a threat, but more often than not, getting the hang of the controls in this minigame is enough to secure yourself the win against most players. Lava or leave 'em. Survive 30 seconds among the lava bubbles as more break off from the main fireball. If all remaining players are eliminated at the same time, it's a tie. Multiple players can win, including everyone. When the minigame starts, the big lava bubble will always move to the top of the platform and then start moving down, where it will finally split into two. This split doesn't mean it splits in half, it's more like it makes a clone of itself and they're both just a little smaller. Each of these lava bubbles will roam around the arena in a random pattern, eventually splitting off themselves over and over as time goes on until there's a bunch of little lava bubbles having a jamboree. When they're this small, you can jump over them, but I wouldn't recommend it considering the hitboxes here are a little mean. Also keep in mind that you're using the D-pad on the Wiimote to move around, so your degree of movement isn't as precise as it would be if you were using an analog stick. Jumping on players can be a brutal attack during the latter part of the minigame since this will slow them down and make it more difficult for them to escape difficult situations. When jumped on, you can still jump fairly well, but with your reduced speed, your jumps may as well not exist since there's no way you'll be making it over a lava bubble. I'd focus more on looking for openings in the arena where there are as few lava bubbles as possible. If you hang around a spot where there's a lot, then it's gonna get even worse there when they choose to split. So it's essential that you prioritize empty zones that are hopefully devoid of players. Mario Matrix. Use your cursor to touch as many lit up panels as you can in 20 seconds. If multiple players click on the same panel at the exact same time, whoever gets it is determined by port priority. If no one clicks on any panels, it's a tie. Multiple players can win, including everyone. When you click on a panel, your cursor will halt for a split second. It is not seamless, so get used to this awkward micropause as you point your Wiimote to the lit up panels. Said panels, by the way, do not show up in a particular pattern and light up at random intervals. When a panel that's lit up is touched, it'll fly backward and return after about a second has passed. During this time, it cannot light up again, and is the game's way of telling you to move on to other panels. When it's back though, it can light up immediately or a few seconds from then. There's no way of telling. If you notice your opponents are fighting over a certain section of the screen, then focus on a different part board so you can actually score some points. Ignore areas that are a little darker due to having panels already been touched, and look towards where there are large clumps of panels that have yet to light up. Odds are a few of them will light up pretty quickly and you can nab some points for yourself. You can't spam click every panel as you move your cursor along them due to the aforementioned pausing in your cursor after clicking on one, so ensure you're accurate as you move it around. Against CPUs, try pausing frequently so you can see where the largest group of lit up panels are in order to instantly grab them. You can do the same against real players too, but this will likely upset them, as you may have expected. Mosh-Pit Playroom. Gather all 50 balls that match your panel's color. Every player must collect the same amount of balls. If multiple players collect their last ball at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. You cannot collect other players' balls, only your own. Here you've got to really focus on the color of your balls only and look around the arena for where the largest clumps of them are. While this arena is quite chaotic, most of the balls will stay in their same relative location. Navigate around the other players as you make your way between clumps, being careful to not miss a single ball in the area you choose to occupy. You do not want to run all the way from one corner to another because you realize you missed a ball you could have gotten earlier. Focus. The hint says to ignore your opponents, but if you can get a free jump on a threat, then do so. This will slow their movement speed momentarily and make it harder for them to collect their balls. This minigame is incredibly unfriendly to those who struggle with distinguishing between these colors. If you or someone you're playing with has this issue, then consider changing your screen's color settings to make it easier for all players to have an enjoyable experience in this cage of chaos. Alternatively, set your screen to grayscale for ultimate confusion. Punch a bunch. Punch the statue to pieces. Throw a punch when the glove swells up to do the most damage. If after 5 minutes no one knows how to punch, it's a tie. If multiple players break their statue at the exact same time, the winner is chosen at random. You hold the Wiimote sideways and thrust it forward to punch. As time goes by, the glove swells up, but if you wait too long, it resets at its smallest size, meaning you're aiming to punch when the glove is large, but not getting too greedy as to end up with a flimsy poke. For your first punch, wait until the glove is just about to touch the light part of this tree in the background. When it's just about to touch it, quickly thrust your Wiimote forward to get a big punch in. For every punch after the first, wait until the moment the glove passes this line, where the ground and background meet. Each time it does, perform a punch. Repeat this process and you should be nailing the Bowser statue with one strong punch after another, eventually winning you the minigame. Rudder Madness. Grab the rudder and steer your way in a river race. The layout of this minigame is the same every time, so feel free to practice it. Keep your rudder straight as often as you can. Harsh turns will waste time, so make a slight turn towards the middle opening of the rocks you see at the beginning. The first hole in the middle is wide enough for 2 players, so don't worry if the player on the other side is attempting to go through it too. Just play nice. Afterwards, you'll go under a bridge. Take care to not run into the poles that are a little hard to see. If any players are directly behind you, then slightly steer into them so they bump into you from behind. This will boost you forward a bit, giving you more of a lead. Avoid the rock in the middle by taking a slight turn away from it and then focus on making it through the last hole in the middle. If other players are neck and neck with you as you're making the approach, then steer into them as much as you can. Unless they decide to do the same thing you did, this will result in you pushing them into the rock in front of them, allowing you to go through the hole on your own and secure victory. Taking these middle routes isn't the only route to victory, but it's a highly recommended path since it requires the least amount of turning to take. If your opponents are all fighting over the middle amongst one another, then consider taking the outside path to go for the win instead. Scooter Pursuit. Blast your rivals in an arena shootout. You have 30 seconds to rack up the most hits. Multiple players can win, including everyone. The minigame's layout is the same every time, being a square arena with a circular structure in the middle. Each shot is worth 1 point. Being shot will make you invulnerable for a full second, but you can still move and shoot. This invulnerability is the most important aspect of the minigame. You cannot fire at the same person again and again, expecting to get a ton of points. Their invulnerability prevents this. You need to shoot between at least 2 players repeatedly instead. With this strategy, by the time you shoot the second player of the 2, the first one you shot's invulnerability timer should be up, so now they can be shot once more for another point. This is why, counterintuitively, it's better to be next to a group of players than attempting to play it safe on the outskirts. You aren't trying to survive, you're just trying to get points. If one player is particularly difficult to hit, whether because they're good at dodging or running around the arena, then ignore them and focus on the easier targets. The tilting controls here can take some getting used to, so feel free to practice them until you build up some muscle memory. Shake it up. Shake your can of soda pop. After 5 seconds, everyone will open their cans. Make your can spew the highest. If no one feels like shaking at all, it's a tie. This can happen even if players shake their can a tiny bit. If multiple players manage to shake the exact same amount, the winner's chosen at random. This minigame's control should come quite naturally to quite a few of you. I mean, who hasn't shaken a soda can before? The hint says don't get too crazy when shaking your can. Small, fast shakes do the trick better than big ones, and it's actually right in this case. Large shaking motions don't do much. Prioritize extremely fast small shakes so that you can spew better than the rest. Sick and Twisted. Jump from one spinning platform to the next in a race to the finish. If all players are eliminated, it's a tie. This means that the minigame is not over just because you're the last one remaining. You've still got to reach the end. Thankfully, it's the same layout every time, and double thankfully, the platforms indicate what they do. The square one is a simple stationary platform without anything special about it. The yellow and blue platforms are circular and will rotate counterclockwise, with the former being smaller and the latter being bigger. The red platforms are also circular but will rotate clockwise, with its size being in the middle between the yellow and blue platforms. All platforms will drop when they reach the leftmost part of the screen, so don't lag too far behind. In addition to trying to navigate these platforms without falling off, bullet bills will fly in from the right. Only one will be on screen at any given time. Where one shoots out from depends on where the furthest ahead player is. For example, if the furthest ahead player is platforming along the top of the course, then the bullet bill will fire directly at them there. If the furthest ahead player was jumping along the bottom of the course, then the bullet bill will fire there instead. Keep this in mind if you're the player that's furthest ahead. The game wants you gone. You can jump on these bullet bills or avoid them by simply jumping to another platform, but with how they rotate, this maneuver can be difficult, especially with how quickly a bullet bill will appear on screen. This is why you want to prioritize staying in the middle of the course and not overextend. Remember, this minigame is not a racing one, it's a survival one, so you don't get anything for reaching the end first. Jumping on players' heads can be crippling for them if they're in the middle, since they run the risk of going too far to the left. Doing so may be hard to pull off without falling yourself, so I only recommend this if you're confident you can land on solid ground after a jump. If you get jumped on, then try to stay where you are. Your movement speed's reduced, so jumps to other platforms are not recommended unless you have to take them. Overall, stick to the middle, watch for where the frontmost player is so you can avoid the bullet bills, and prioritize jumping onto the larger platforms. Speedy Graffiti. Spray paint the shapes carved into the stone. If no one gets any points, it's a tie. Multiple players can win, including everyone. Each player gets the same random order of stones, so no complaining. While the minigame wants you to trace the outline of each shape, the condition for destroying a stone is actually pretty lax, not requiring you to fill in every pixel of the shape to obtain a point. With this, you can aim your Wiimote all over the place and go crazy with your painting, finishing way quicker than you would have if you took your time tracing the shape. Speaking of which, there are 3 shapes that can appear: circle, square, and triangle. For the circle, I actually recommend quickly spraying your paint in a circle as fast as you can. Often players will just go for the spray everything approach here, but I found that quick circle motions do the job better. For the square, same deal. I do large circle motions, and if I happen to miss a corner or two, will quickly aim at said corner to fill in the gap. For the triangle, I do small circle motions, which tends to not cause any problems as they go by pretty quickly. If you can perfect doing fast circles with decent accuracy, then you'll outspeed even those that cheese this minigame by simply spraying everywhere. Go at it! Swing Kings. Hit baseballs into the outfield. You'll get 20 pitches. If no one gets any points, it's a tie. Multiple players can win, including everyone. Each player gets their own set of throws. The Shy Guy has 3 different types of throws: low, medium, and high. Each one is reactable, with the low throw being the hardest of the 3 to react to due to how little time you're given. Whenever the Shy Guy is about to throw, keep your eyes glued to where the ball's about to leave his hand. Prepare for a low throw. If you see it coming in low, then swing as soon as it gets close to you. If the ball is not a low throw, then you have a bit more time to react, easily being able to move your eyes to the ball and identify whether it's a medium throw or a high throw. Treacherous Tightrope. Cross the tightrope. Use the balancing pole, especially when the wind blows. If no player reaches the end, it's a tie. Keep your Wiimote tilted forward 90 degrees at all times. Focus on your character. If you see yourself tilting to one side, then slightly tilt to the other to correct it. Sounds obvious, but many players won't notice that they're unintentionally tilting one direction ever so slightly. So by the time wind blows in from one direction, they have less time to react and end up falling. So keep focus on straightening out. When that wind comes, tilt a little more than slightly against it. Don't tilt your whole Wii remote towards the wind. Just make sure it's enough to even yourself out. Don't stop moving forward when doing your tilts, by the way. There's no reason to stop moving. Ever. If you're tilting too far one direction, then your character will stop and start freaking out. If this happens, then immediately tilt your Wiimote the other way and straighten it once they've recovered, moving forward once more. Water Ski Spree, a coin minigame. The rules say catch Shy Guy's coins as you water ski, but Shy Guy doesn't actually throw any coins for you to catch. The coins can be found on these ramps, of which the ramps are in the same layout every time. When there's a single ramp on one side, there will always be a coin there, but when there are two ramps to choose from, a coin will only be on one of them. Unfortunately, the coin will not reveal itself until you get close to one of the two ramps. This seems to force you into a blind pick between the two, but luckily your turning radius on your ski is insane. Simply stay directly in between the two ramps, and when you see the coin appear on one of them, make the sharpest turn you can towards it and you'll nab it no problem. This maneuver is possible to do twice in a row as well. When you land after the first set of panels, realign to the middle quickly and react once more with a sharp turn. The spiny Shy Guy throws down will stun you and force you to return to the middle, preventing you from gathering coins. He'll tend to throw these spinies on the far left and right side of the course where the coins are, so look out for his shenanigans and you should bring home the dough pretty easily. 1v3 minigames, Bob-ombs Away. 3 players try to blast the solo player within 30 seconds by dropping bob-ombs. The opening of the minigame implies that if an explosion occurs right next to the solo player, then they will get knocked back for a moment, but this is not the case. While the clear intention of this minigame is for the solo player to try and predict where the bob-ombs are falling as they come down, it becomes quite difficult considering the speed at which they fall and how they'll often land in the middle of pegs, resulting in a lot of 50-50s. If you're the solo player, then you want to reduce the amount of 50-50 guesses you have to make as much as possible. Run to open areas where bob-ombs aren't falling towards, or at the very least, only be in an area where there's one bob-omb falling towards you instead of multiple. If you see a bob-omb hit the second peg and head one direction, then you're safe to head the opposite direction it went since it has no chance at following you. This is, of course, a lot easier to do when there aren't multiple bob-ombs to track, but that's something you've got to get used to in order to win. If you're on the team of 3, then feel free to bypass throwing your bob-ombs on the first pegs and aim for throwing them directly down onto the second pegs. This way, the solo player will have much less time to react to your maneuver, doubly so if your partners do this as well. Make sure you're covering a lot of ground and make sure you do not throw bob-ombs down the same gap as one another. This will cause them to get stuck for a moment and waste time. Chump Rope. One player swings a jump rope for 15 seconds, trying to trip up 3 jumpers. If you're the solo player, then you can have a lot of fun with this, swinging the rope super fast just to slow it down and resume swinging it fast once more. While it may look like you have total control though, it's not as simple as it looks. You can't, for example, keep the rope in the ground right next to the team of 3 and quickly scurry it under them. Once your rope reaches the halfway point in the middle of the air, it will always go at least very slow to, I imagine, prevent this cheesy strat from working. You can keep the rope still on the other side of the players, but this doesn't exactly work out all that well since they can easily react to any quick movement you do afterwards. Spice up your swings from fast to slow. If switching between these speeds isn't enough to get all players out, then just focus on going fast, but make sure that every fast swing you do has a slightly different fast speed than the last. You're still going fast, but you want to avoid doing it with a rhythm so that the team of 3 has to constantly pay attention to the rope. If you're on the team of 3, then do just that. Constantly focus on the rope. Don't assume that it will function like any other jump rope minigame in the franchise. This one can go at many differing speeds, requiring you to keep focus on its speed until the very moment you make your jump. The controls for you are not a simple button press press, by the way, but instead is a shake up of the Wiimote. This will cause you to jump the same height regardless of how you shake. It may take some getting used to and can easily result in a loss if you accidentally shake a bit too much and jump when you're not in any danger. Grabbin Gold, a coin minigame. Move your basket to catch as many falling coins as you can. It's 3 against 1, or at least that's what the rules say. There's no real interaction between the two teams. If you're the solo player, then prioritize staying in the middle so that you can adapt to where the coins and spinies fall. Getting hit by a spiny is devastating, as it'll cause you to not be able to grab any coins for a few seconds, resulting in up to 3 coins missed each time you get hit. Your basket can move pretty fast though, so as long as you're tilting far one way or the other, you can easily move in time to collect coins or avoid these spinies. The basket's hitbox is generous in that you can grab coins that even hit the bottom of it. Same goes for spinies though, so be careful. If you're on the team of 3, then each player on the team should be going for the same coins that fall. This way, if a player above misses it, the player below has their back. There's no real need to spread out since there aren't enough coins that drop at once, meaning you're free to work together as a team towards individual coins as they drop. The team of 3 here has an interesting disadvantage compared to the solo player, and I'm unsure if it was on purpose or not. You can see that their player icons cover up the entire top part of their machine, whereas the solo player's icon only covers up a small part of their machine. With this, you've got to focus on looking out for the yellow bits that fall behind your icons as you move towards them. Gun the Runner. One player climbs a tower in 30 seconds while dodging the trip-up shots of the other 3 players. The layout is the same every time. As the solo player, if you get hit by a ball, then you'll get stunned for a couple seconds. Afterward, you'll be able to move and will be granted a second of invulnerability. When the minigame begins, prioritize scaling the far left platforms. You'll see a moving platform coming down for you. Your aim is to land on it before it starts heading back up. If you pull this off, then head right and land on the right platform moving up. This will set you up for an easy couple jumps to the very top where you can complete the minigame. The reason why this path is recommended is because if you get hit mid-jump from one platform to another, you won't fall as far as you would if you had taken a different path. Not everything will go your way here though, as the team of 3 will likely get some good shots in you here and there. For the moving platforms in particular, jump in place a few times so that your opponents don't get an easy shot. Alternatively, you could purposely take a shot about halfway up the platform cycle so that you can take advantage of the invulnerability frames when you make the crucial jump from one platform to the next. If your opponents do happen to screw you out of a path you were planning on taking, then improvise and take the other raising platforms instead. They aren't terrible, but again are more dangerous if you happen to fall. When reaching the end, make sure your feet are planted on the elevator. I've seen players accidentally jump over it and waste time, so don't get fancy. If you're on the team of 3, then work together to hit the solo player at the most crucial moments. Hitting them while they're on the moving platforms is fun, sure, but then you run the risk of them becoming invulnerable and easily making what should have been a hard jump. Instead, shoot whenever you see that they're about to scale up or if they're on this long platform here, just so that you waste their time. If you can manage to make them fall, then just fire away as much as you can to waste up the rest of their time. Unless they're skilled, it's unlikely they'll recover after a devastating fall. Keep in mind that there's a second delay between your shots too. Picture perfect. Stop the turning panels to match the target image. You'll have 20 seconds for each round. If neither side matches 3 pictures within 10 rounds, the minigame ends in a tie, regardless if one team has more points than the other. The solo player has 4 panels in their projection, while the team of 3 has 9. Each side has 20 seconds to match a picture. The first side to match 3 pictures wins. The possible objects are a mushroom, fire flower, cloud, cheap paratroopa shell, and Yoshi egg. The projections will individually flip through the objects at random, sometimes even flipping between the same object multiple times in a row, meaning you've got to be fast when you see the correct object appear. When you stop a panel, you can restart it by clicking on it again, but only if it's on the wrong object, so no need to worry about accidentally screwing things up. As the solo player, it's unlikely you'll see all 4 pieces of the correct object appear at once, so you probably don't have to worry about clicking on each one, but just in case you end up in this situation or have 3 to worry about, keep your cursor in the middle of all projections. That way you can visit each corner of each panel super fast to ensure victory. If you're on the team of 3, then things can get real messy real fast if you trip over one another. Ideally, if you're all around the same skill level, each one of you can occupy one row row, easily nabbing the correct objects without affecting one another's button presses. If the people you're playing with are newbies, then you could go for broke and try to monopolize as much as you can, avoiding where their curses are to get the most matches. Power Trip. One player drives a hovercraft and tries to run down the other 3 in 30 seconds. The solo player tilts their Wiimote to move left and right, whereas the team of 3 uses the D-pad to move. The layout is the same every time. A player on the team of 3 will get knocked out of the game if they either make contact with the hovercraft or fall off the platforms. If you're the solo player, then you want to goat the team into making as many jumps as possible. It's during these moments where you'll find the most amount of opportunities to score a knockout, since their movement becomes very predictable since they need to land somewhere in order to continue on. Clever players will know you're trying to attempt this and, when cornered, will mix up their movement in order to avoid having to take a jump, opting in for running around you instead. If you're up against a player of this skill level, then call out their mix-up for a knockout that way. You only need to win the 50-50 once against a player. Where things get difficult here is if a player on the team of 3 keeps to the middle. Here they have a lot of room to run circles around you, avoiding the downsides of getting cornered or being forced to make jumps. Unfortunately, your hovercraft can't make super tight turns, so if a player on the team is skilled enough, they can most certainly stay at your side or behind you for a long period of time. Should this occur, you need to move away from them and onto the edge of the arena, then move directly towards them, hoping for a good read. Chasing them in circles while in the middle will make it easy for them to adapt to your sluggish movement. If you run into one of the invisible walls, then you'll stay facing that way until you turn again. However, if you're in the middle of turning a direction when you hit a wall, then your hovercraft will do a sharp turn in the direction you were turning, which can be useful in catching unsuspecting players off guard. If you're on the team of 3, then spread out and avoid jumping on your teammates' heads at all costs. This will reduce their movement speed and make it substantially easier for the solo player to catch them. Stick around the middle as often as possible, juking the hovercraft and annoying the solo player. Unless they're skilled enough to leave, return, and read you, this minigame should normally end in a victory for your team. Snow Way Out. One player has 30 seconds to make 3 rivals fall from a roof by throwing snowballs and icing up the shingles. The team of 3 can fall off the left, right, and bottom sides of the roof, but not the top. If the solo player hits the 3 directly with a snowball, then they'll turn to ice and immediately lose the minigame as they helplessly slide down. Should the solo player hit the roof itself with a snowball, the spot will be made slippery. This means that the team will have a harder time moving across and up ice spots, but will move faster down them. If you're the solo player, then aim at where at least 2 of the players are grouped up. Unless they're well synchronized, odds are at least 2 are going to be in the same general location, making it easy for you to at least hit one of them, or at worst case scenario, hit where they were standing with some ice, making that spot not as viable for them. Target the worst player of the 3 first, since at the beginning of the minigame, there are no ice spots, meaning it's easy for everyone to run around. The best player should be saved for last when there's a ton of ice spots on the roof. This will make it more difficult for them to dodge your snipes as you do your best to predict their movements and nail them good. Take care to not shoot at the same spot multiple times. It won't become any more slippery and will instead just waste what could have been an opportunity to make the roof more of a hassle for the team. If you're on the team of 3, then, as always, spread out and do not jump on your teammates' heads. This will reduce their movement speed, still letting them jump, but nonetheless will spell their doom. Recall that the ice spots slow you down when moving across and up them, so jump instead of running on them in those directions to keep yourself at max speed. Feel free to run down ice spots though, for this will grant you a boost in speed that'll make it more difficult for the solo player to hit ya. Don't get so comfortable doing this that you accidentally fall off the bottom though. Focus on getting a quick speed boost and then immediately changing directions as soon as you're off the ice. Swervin Skies. One player tries to shoot the other 3 down by hitting the 2 targets on each aircraft. A player on the team is downed if both balloons on their plane are hit. This minigame is a simple matter of moving and predicting. If you're the solo player, then target the most skilled player first. This is because the team of 3 have collision with one another, making this starting point of the minigame the most difficult for the team team to avoid you. It's when there's one player left that things become difficult since your target has no one to bump into and can fly around freely without worry. You want this last player to be the least skilled one of the three so that everything balances out. If the team is fairly spread out and the skilled player is avoiding your shots, then consider shooting at the less skilled players in an attempt to move them towards the skilled one in order to make an opening. If you're on the team of 3, then play diagonals. It's more difficult for the solo player to hit you here, and you can see them coming from fewer angles than if you were in the middle, where their shots can come from anywhere. When you see them move in to get you, move in the exact opposite direction they move. So if they're going down and to the left, you go up and to the right. This will cause your plane and theirs to be tilted at opposite angles, meaning at most, only one of your balloons can get shot down during this maneuver. Avoid your partners as much as possible, taking great care not to bump into them lest you want to give the solo player an easy takedown. Thrash and Crash. 3 players try to survive a booby-trapped skateboard course. The solo player shoots traps to activate them. Here are all the obstacles that the team of 3 has to avoid. Stacks of barrels, which when activated fall over and act as a wall. Pipes, which when activated fires a slow-moving bullet bill. Wheels, which when activated causes them to roll to the other side at a faster speed than a bullet bill. Womps, which stand in the way and act as wall. They cannot be activated by the solo player. Walls, which players can brush up against on the side but will result in them being knocked out if they hit the front of it. The layout is the same every time, which makes this minigame even more unfair for the solo player than it already was. If you're on the team of 3, then you may feel tempted to ease back on the brakes so you can see what's up ahead, but this is actually the worst thing you could do. It allows the solo player to activate all the traps ahead of you and puts you in a position to try and dodge them all. If, instead, you keep yourself at the top of the screen, then almost every trap the solo player can activate will not hit you in time because of how high up you are. It's stupid. The only one they can activate that has a chance of hitting you is the bullet bill, but that's easy to react to. The other thing you have to worry about when doing this are the womps, which are always in the middle, and the walls, which appear from the left and right sides. But even these obstacles aren't much to be afraid of so long as you stay in the middle left and middle right parts of the course. If you find difficult in staying in this zone, then simply brush against a wall and then keep your Wiimote still to remain in that spot as you skate along. If you memorize this course's layout and know when the walls and thwomps are coming so that you can move in advance, then this is made even more unbalanced. If you're the solo player and going against a team that doesn't know the aforementioned strat, then activate the traps with proper care in order to hit your opponents. Some, like the wheel, can take a little bit to get going, so hit it earlier than you would a bullet bill. If you're up against even a single player that knows how to execute the aforementioned strat, then keep your cursor glued to the top of the screen and activate traps as soon as possible, primarily the bullet bills, which are your sole chances at landing a hit on them. 2v2 minigames. Boo-ting Gallery. Make your way through the house exterminating red boos. The first team to defeat the red boo in the basement wins. If neither team manages to ghost hunt properly by the time 5 minutes passes, it's a tie. If both teams get the final shot off at the same time, the winner's chosen at random. There are 3 stages. The first stage takes place outside. Here you must take out a pair of boos 5 times in a row for a total of 10 boos. Each boo in a pair can spawn wherever, whether that be right next to one another or on opposite sides. No matter the formation, know your teammate. If you're both going for the same boo, then detour and grab the other one instead so you don't miss a shot. Generally, you want to shoot at the middle of the boos or even a little higher. By the way, the formations the boos appear on the first stage are different between each team, so it is possible for one team to luck out with easier to hit formations than the other. The second stage takes place within the mansion, and things are a bit more predictable here, but both teams won't get the exact same layout. There are 2 boo spawns that are guaranteed to occur, with one being down by this pole and the other floating above the second floor. Each of these boos will slowly fade into existence, meaning you can't hit them until they're fully visible. The direction they flow is the same every time, and it's random whether they'll appear at the beginning of the stage or later on. When firing at the bottom bottom one, wait until it floats past the pole to fire, even if it's fully visible behind the pole. This sucker will block your shot, so be patient. When firing at the top one, simply wait half a second before firing. These two boos will appear twice throughout this stage, undergoing the same pattern after being defeated the first time. Sometimes one will spawn a couple seconds before the other, but nonetheless you will always have to defeat two each before moving on to the next stage. In addition to them, a pair of boos will be appearing on the screen just like how they did in the first stage, except they can't show up on the left side of the screen since that side is reserved for the earlier pair we just talked about. They'll often be stationary, but if you don't shoot them after a bit, they can float around just like the two on the left. Other times they'll just sit there though. The more skilled player between you and your partner should be focusing on the left side of the screen, hitting the more difficult moving boos that require a little bit of patience to nail. Leave the immobile boos to the less experienced player. This is if both pairs of boos are available to hit at once. If only one pair is up, then assist one player in eliminating them quickly and moving on. The third stage takes place in the basement of the mansion, where a big boo resides, which takes 40 total shots to defeat. You and your partner must simply fire away at this boo, making sure to land your shots as accurately as possible as it floats around the screen, changing directions randomly to screw you up. It may do a quick spin turn or will remain still for a moment and do a slower one. Knowing these two turn types will help you move your cursor a little in advance in order to not get thrown off. The direction the big boo goes will be different between the two teams, but the degree of randomness here isn't really enough for it to be used as an excuse if one loses, considering just how slow it moves. Keep your eyes locked onto your target and fire away until this mansion is back into the hands of Luigi. Bumper balloons. You and your teammate must pop balloons that match your team color before your rivals pop theirs first. If neither team manages to pop all of their balloons by the time 5 minutes passes, it's a tie. If the last balloon of each team is popped at the exact same time, the winner is chosen at random. The balloon layout is the same every time. You can pop your opponent's balloons in addition to your own, so be careful. The player on the far left and far right should immediately head upward, avoiding their opponent's balloon and popping their two balloons at the top of the screen. The player on the inner left and inner right should immediately cut across the grass to pop their two balloons in the middle of the screen and then go for the one in the bottom corner. These are the best paths to take if you and your partner are in sync, so feel free to let your teammate know which balloons to go for. Crops and robbers. Clear your team's garden first. One of you pulls carrots, the other whacks Monties. Incredibly interesting detail about this minigame here. A team will secure victory the moment these two conditions are met. Their last Monty Mole has been hit with the hammer, and their last carrot touches the cart. The Monty Mole part makes sense, but you'd think that the win condition for the carrot would be merely plucking it, but it's not, which can result in a situation like this, where even though the left team hits their last Monty first, they actually end up losing the minigame because you're only done once both your last Monty has been bonked and your last carrot hits your cart. And as you can see here, the right team bonks their last Monty, and then both teams' carrots reach the cart at exactly the same time, which forces a tie situation, then resulting in the game randomly selecting a winner. What a wild circumstance. If neither team wants to clean up the garden after 5 minutes passes, it's a tie. Each team will be given the same layout. Both carrots and Monty Moles act as blockades. Same goes for the rocks. Whether you're pulling carrots or whacking Monties, you need to pay great attention to where your teammate needs to head next. If you're too focused on your own objective elsewhere while they need you to come help them get rid of something blocking them, then you'll be wasting a ton of time. Likewise, tell them to get rid of any blockade you come across so that you aren't waiting for them. This can happen just a single time in the minigame or constantly throughout. It's the most important part of making sure you complete it quickly, so prioritize scanning your layout and figuring out who needs to go where. The controls are a little strange, where you've got to keep your Wiimote upright and move with the D-pad. If you have the hammer, then you simply have to swing your Wiimote down for a whack. If you're pulling carrots, then you've got to grab a hold of it first by pressing down the A button and then swing up. I've seen players forget to grab it before swinging before, so make sure you do that. Grabby Gridiron, the closest we've ever gotten to a Mario football game. Catch balls and throw them into the goal that matches your team color. Bash rivals to make them drop a ball. If both teams score their final point at the same time, the winner's chosen by port priority. If after 5 minutes neither team scores 5 points, it's a tie. Two of the 4 cannons at the far top side of the arena shoot out the first 2 footballs. Then they start to bounce off the walls like crazy, making it incredibly difficult for anyone to nab them on purpose. When a football is thrown into the goal, one of the cannons will shoot out another football. The bars in the top indicate how many footballs a team has thrown into their goal. You can jump on, punch, and jump kick other players, including your own teammate. Regardless of what you do, this will result in the player losing a football if they're carrying one. While holding onto a football, your movement speed will be reduced and you cannot punch nor jump kick, but you can still jump. At the beginning of the minigame, immediately move towards your side's cannons and jump. There's no guarantee that even one football will shoot out onto your side, but if one does, then you can intercept the football in midair and quickly make your way to the opponent's goal. When a football is obtained, your opponents will start coming after you. Jump as soon as they come within punching or jump kicking distance. If you manage to land on their head, then you'll slow them down and buy yourself more time. Ensure your jump is as high as it can be by holding down the jump button instead of merely tapping it. If you see that your partner has a football as well, then spread out. This will force your opponents to either split up to take care of each of you individually, or if they're less bright, will 2v1 one of you and let the other one pass on by. You don't want to bunch up with your teammate and give your opponents an easy opportunity to steal both of your footballs. If you manage to get onto their side with a football, then run closer to the corner instead of down the middle so that if you get hit, there's a higher chance that the ball will bounce back to you due to less angles for it to get away. Going down the middle introduces a lot more chance in where the football goes after you get hit and is only recommended if your opponents are too far away to punish you and you're just trying to get to the goal as fast as possible. When hit, you'll be invulnerable for a second, but you can still pick up a football, so no worries there. When you reach the goal, you'll deposit the football automatically, but only if you're grounded, so don't jump here and try to find some footing. This can be incredibly difficult if your opponents are all over you, sometimes resulting in moments where you're constantly bouncing off their heads. Just stay calm and look for an opening where you can land on the goal. You only need a split second. After making a goal, immediately head to the closest cannons and prepare to intercept another football. If odds are in your favor, then a football will be shot directly at you, where you can intercept it and score another goal on your unsuspecting opponents. If instead the new football shoots out of the other cannons, then it's no sweat, just run after it like normal. If your opponent has a ball and they're running towards the goal with it, then run straight towards them at full speed. Odds are you'll catch up to them due to their reduced speed, where you can then go for a jump kick to knock them away. The football will bounce around in a crazy fashion at this rate, where you've got to make some guesses to intercept it. Don't worry if you screw up this part, since it's pretty random with the angles at which they go about. What is predictable though, is that after a few seconds of bouncing, a football will slow down and eventually stop right on the field. Should this happen, knock any opponents close to it and then pick up the ball, making a break for the goal. If your teammate has a ball and is trying to score a point, then defend them by smacking your opponents. If you're ahead in points and each team is about to score a point, then defend your teammate instead of preventing the other team from getting a point. You'll get more value this way. Recall that you can only win the minigame by scoring 5 points. There is no winning by time, so stalling is not an option. In truth, you should rarely lose this minigame so long as you're paying close attention to where your opponents are in relation to the footballs. The slower speed when holding onto one makes for easy punishes, and intercepting footballs out of cannons lessens the luck factor of them bouncing around. King of the Thrill, pummel your foe off the crumbling platform. If rival fighters win the first round, they'll face off at the top. If all remaining players fall off at the same time, the winner is chosen at random. A player from each team will fight against one another on a small rocky platform for the first round. Whoever's the last one standing here will face off against the winner of the other platform. If both players from the same team win their scuffle, then the minigame will end at round 2 and their victory. If players from opposing teams win their scuffle, then the minigame continues into round 2 on a larger rocky platform. In both rounds, the rocky platforms will slowly crumble away piece by piece at random, giving players less room to run around. In the first round, go for a jump kick. If you nail it and they fall off, great, you'll move on to the second round. If they don't fall off and are instead on the very edge of the platform, then no worries, your jump kick stunned them for a full second, and this is more than enough time for you to run into them and push them off the the platform with your hitbox. Yeah, this is actually a viable strategy. You should be preemptively moving towards your opponent even after your jump kick connects, just in case you need to employ this strategy. Waiting to see if they fell or not wastes valuable time and will result in them getting back up from their stun animation and retaliating. There's also a chance that when you jump kicked them, they were too far on your side, not giving you enough time to push them off. In this case, they'll likely get a hit on you since they have a second of invincibility, but if you preemptively moved towards them like mentioned before, then this hit shouldn't knock you out and will instead place you on the edge. Simply go for another jump kick to try and knock them off, and if they're stunned on the edge, then do the aforementioned strat of running into them. In the second round, jump kicking and pushing isn't viable on the first strike since the platform is too large. If you and the other player are equal in skill, then it's very unlikely either of you will knock one another out until the arena slowly starts to crumble away. When it does, align yourself in the center of it so that no matter where your opponent smacks you, you won't fall. Attempt to hit them at angles closer to the edge instead of edges far away. Every hit that doesn't knock them off is one you're likely going to take back since their invulnerability will basically allow them a freebie, and this can be deadly if the arena starts collapsing against your favor. If you and your opponent somehow manage to last long enough to the point that there's a tiny platform left, then jump away from the platform and return with a jump kick. At this point, even a single hit can knock either of you out, so don't feel too bad if you don't seal the deal. Lean Mean Ravine. Reach the finish line with your hovercraft before the rival team gets there first. If both teams reach the end at the same time, the winner is chosen at random. The layout is the same every time. Despite this being a hovercraft, it will slow down on rocky terrain, so you and your teammate need to focus on moving it towards the shallow water where it can go at its maximum speed. The ramps will grant you a jump and speed boost, letting you blast ahead and even persevere through the rocky terrain for a little bit. The water jets may appear to blast out at random, but they actually react to the first player that gets close to them, so do not assume you can run over them safely unless they've just been activated by the other team. And these guys don't blast you up, by the way, they blast you away, so keep an eye on them. At the beginning, regardless of which side you start on, aim for heading right. While boosting off the panel and dropping onto the rocky terrain isn't as bad as merely hovering over it, this will still slow you down enough to not make it worth it. Keep right with your partner, hit the boost, and make sure you keep holding right to avoid hitting the geyser. Immediately hold right after this section so that you can hit the next boost. Keep holding right, hugging the wall if you have to, so that you can be prepared to hit the boost afterwards as well. This next geyser is in a mean spot, considering it's straight ahead of you. Turn right to avoid it in the rocky terrain on the other side. Similar to an earlier jump, you want to weave left in between the geyser and rocky terrain, where you'll leap towards your final section, requiring you to simply turn right, left, and then wherever to avoid all the geysers. The obstacles and pathing itself aren't that complex. What this minigame really comes down to is how in sync you are with your partner, so get a feel for how skilled they are when playing and have them adapt to you or adapt to them, whichever is easier. Paint Misbehavin'. Work with your teammate to paint more Goombas your team color than your rivals. If both teams have an even amount of Goombas painted, it's a tie. You and your partner are on different sides. Keep it that way so you can cover more ground, or Goombas in paint. While it may be tempting to fire at the Goombas far away from you with some trick shots, focus on the ones in front of you first. These guys are moving all over the place, so chances are you'll have plenty of opportunities to paint over your opponent's paint. The last thing you need is to give your opponents a big lead in painted Goombas, since all they need to do after their lead is secured is to repeatedly paint the Goombas you're painting over and over. If your team is ahead, then watch for whatever Goombas your opponents are nailing and annoy them by painting the Goomba they just painted right back to your color. This will stall out the timer a bit and force your opponents to get more creative with their shots in order to pull ahead. Don't encroach on your partner's territory. If there are easy Goombas to paint in front of them, then let them paint them. Focus on the ones close to you and only nail the ones far away if it's an easy shot or if the end of the minigame is drawing near. Road to victory. You and your teammate must row your boat to the island. You each control one oar, so coordinate your rows. If both teams reach the end at the same time, the winner's chosen by port priority. If neither team figures out how to row after 5 minutes, it's a tie. The layout of the arena is the same every time, but where the two teams spawn to the outside is random each time. Each team will, however, always spawn directly opposite of one another. This minigame is a fantastic example of a simple objective that can be made difficult by poor teamwork. Odds are when you start there will only be a few obstacles you've got to avoid in order to reach the middle of the lake. All you've got to do is row at the same rate as your partner to go forward. Let the left person row to turn right, and let the right person row to turn left. But of course, it's never that simple. More often than not, 2 players on a team will both try and row and try to solve any problems that come up at the same time, ironically making things worse as they flip around and row every which way. To avoid this common issue, simply do small callouts and notify your partner what you're up to. If you don't feel comfortable with this, then at the very least, let your teammate be the one to correct your course if you're about to run into an obstacle instead of fighting with them over it. Anytime your teammate is about to turn your boat too far away from the middle, row faster than them to get the 2 of you back on course. You could just tell them to constantly row at the same pace throughout the entire minigame. If they listen, then that'll put you in full control over how the boat turns, since it'll be based on whether you go fast or slow in relation to your partner who's consistently going the same speed. Sugar Rush. Recreate the sample cake by moving toppings to the right spots. Get 2 cakes completed first. If both teams score their last point at the same time, the winner's chosen at random. If neither team figures out how to decorate a cake after 10 rounds, it's a tie. Each team is given the same cake to match. Each cake only has certain spots that toppings can be placed on, and those spots are simply the ones that you see in the image. This is helpful information because it means that you don't have to be super accurate with your placement in order to get your topping in the right spot. All you've got to do is throw your topping within the general location of the spot it needs to go in for it to count. If you end up misplacing a topping, then grab it and move it over. When the minigame is about to start, tell your partner to grab the toppings on one side, whereas you grab the ones on the other. This will prevent the common mistake teammates often have where they'll go for the same topping and end up wasting time. If you notice your partner places down a topping incorrectly and they don't correct this error, then do it for them. Placing a topping on top of one another does not replace the topping. You simply won't be able to place the topping in your hand down. Winner or dinner, a coin minigame. Grab the most coins in the oasis. Watch out for piranha plants. No, seriously, watch out for piranha plants. Although they may feel far away, you will see player after player get launched to Kingdom Come throughout the minigame. Watch for which pots have piranha plants sprouted out at the time and which don't. If there are a few coins right next to one that's active, then ignore those coins in favor of ones that are in a safer position, such as directly around the middle pot or on the middle, top, right, bottom, or left parts of the arena. I'm not going to sit here and say that standing next to a pot without a piranha plant is 100% safe, by the way. These guys will pop out of the pots extremely fast and make you excrete your lunch even faster. So if you see coins next to an empty pot, just know you're taking a gamble when going for them. Try to get just close enough to nab the coins, but not so close that you're within range of getting chuckstered. Jumping on opponents will not reduce their coin total. It'll only slow them down. If a threat is on the opposing team, then this may be a good play, but if you're looking just to up your coin count, then focus on spreading out with your teammate and grabbing coins that the middle pot spouts out. This pot, by the way, can also spit out spinies, which will stun you for a moment if you touch them. Jump over them instead of running around them to save time as you move between coins. Battle minigames. Aim of the game. Shoot 5 falling cards to get the highest score. Some cards have face values, others have multipliers. Any players that have the same score will tie with one another. The card values are 5, 10, 20, 30, 50 times 2, which doubles your current score, and times 0, which reduces your current score to 0. The most points you can get is 800, either by hitting a 50-point card first and then 2 times multiplier cards for the other 4, or by hitting 2 50-point cards first and 3 2 times multiplier cards after. When the minigame starts, keep your eyes peeled for a 50-point card. That is your ticket to the highest amount of points. All the cards that are falling down randomly will be spinning as they do, so it may be hard to find a 50-point card, but I assure you, one will be falling at the beginning, so once you see it, nab it before anyone else. Once you do, look for another 50-point card or a 2 times card. Either one works, as we just went over. After that, just focus on getting 2 times cards. They will be there. There is no timer visible on this minigame, but it will end by time when the last of the cards fall off screen. If you see that no new cards are falling and you haven't gotten 5 cards yet, then just nail the highest point cards you can find. Something's better than nothing, except the times 0 cards, obviously. Hitting one of these, especially at the end, is catastrophic. Verify what's on the front of each card before you shoot it with focused eyes. Do not trust your peripheral vision unless unless you're stressed for time. Cut from the team, take turns snipping wires. Some are dead wires, but others trigger a catapult that sends you flying. Out of the 10 wires, 3 will launch you if you cut them. If you manage to cut one of the wires that's safe, then you'll move to the back of the line. This minigame is essentially a Bowser's Big Blast, but with more choices to choose from. There are no predetermined set of wires that can help you decide between which ones are safe and which ones aren't. Hope you've got a parachute. Glacial Meltdown. Be the last one standing on the ice platform. Kick and punch foes. You can also use Buzzy Beetles to attack. If all 4 players fall off the iceberg, the last player to fall off wins. If 5 minutes pass before 3 players fall off, the remaining players will tie with one another. The iceberg tilts depending on where a majority of players are standing, so if you have a good grasp on where everyone's moving, then you can position yourself in a better spot to launch an offensive. This is because hitting someone down the slope will result in more knockback than up the slope, and you want a both strong offense and strong defense. The Lakitu flying around will drop Buzzy Beetles onto the iceberg as well. Running into them will stun you for a second, which is a huge detail you can take advantage of. What if you're on the edge and a player's about to knock you out? If a Buzzy Beetle's right next to you, then you can purposely run into it at an angle that won't knock you off. And with your invincibility frames, you can now make it back to the center of the iceberg for safety. If you jump on the Buzzy Beetle, then it'll retreat into its shell, where you can then poke it so that it slides across the field, knocking players away from it. A small detail that isn't as noticeable about these guys is that they count towards the weight on the iceberg as well, with 1 being equal to the weight of a single player. So if you're confused as to why the iceberg is tilting a certain way, then it's probably because one of the beetles is responsible for the shift. If 2 Buzzy Beetles get knocked into one another, then they'll bonk and despawn. Jumping on players' heads reduces their movement speed and is pretty pointless this time around, considering you aren't bringing them any closer to falling off, and you just granted them invincibility frames, which they can now use against you. Punches come out quick and are a good get-off-me tool, but as always, jump kicks allow mobility while you're attacking from the sky. Do sweeping motions with your kicks to hit multiple players at once if you can. If the iceberg is in your favor when you hit someone, then odds are they'll either fall off or won't be able to make it back to the middle in time for a full recovery, in which case, go for the knockout. Just make sure no one's behind you ready to take advantage of your vulnerability. Saucer Swarm. Shoot more of the incoming invaders than your rivals. Any players that get the same score will tie with one another. Every player starts with the same initial layout as one another, but as time goes on in the minigame, more and more saucers will arrive, with their locations being random between players. At around 20 seconds, a golden saucer will arrive for all players. This one is worth 2 points instead of the usual 1, and after landing will move around at a quick rate. If it's not shot within about 9 seconds, it'll leave. Unfortunately, this minigame is played by tilting the Wiimote left and right, so accurate shots are a bit difficult, but if you can get used to the little quirks with it, then this one becomes a whole lot easier. Start by knocking out the largest swarm first. You don't have to aim for any particular saucer, just tilt in the direction of them and fire away. Once you're through with this initial cleanup, keep spamming your shoot button as you turn left and right, taking great care to slow down and nail any saucers that are much closer than the others. For if a saucer touches you, you'll get stunned for a second, which is a huge deal since that initial stun is more than enough of a time waste to let all the other saucers close in on you and put you in a perpetual stun lock for the rest of the minigame. Yeah, the design isn't all that there. This is why it's absolutely crucial to avoid getting stunned at all and constantly turning left and right, firing upon the ones that get close. If you manage to see the golden saucer as it's dropping at 20 seconds, immediately fire multiple shots at it even before it fully drops down. It takes a second before moving upon touching the ground, so nailing it before it begins its erratic movements is amazing. If you miss or happen to see it after it already starts running all over the place, then stop focusing on it. You're unlikely to hit it on purpose at this rate, and putting all your attention on it just for 2 points is not worth it considering the time you're granting the saucers outside your field of vision to hone in on you for stuns. More than anything, getting used to the controls here will help you conquer these crusaders. Snipe for the picking. Rack up the biggest score by shooting the target zones with the highest numbers. Any players that get the same score will tie with one another. A total of 15 apple-shaped targets will slide in one after another. There are 3 target zones, 10, 30, and 100. The highest amount of points a player can achieve is 1,500 if they manage to hit the 100-point target zone on all 15 targets. The targets do not have the point zones in the same location every time. There are 8 variations that the minigame will randomly show players. Here are all 8. You can see with your own eyes that just because 100 is the highest amount doesn't mean it's always the hardest one to hit. In a couple cases, it's easier than the rest. Get a good image on what targets to expect so that you can quickly react to them popping up in front of you. I personally hover my cursor around the middle right parts of targets so that I'm a good distance away from wherever the 100-point target for the next one shows up. Every player, by the way, will receive the same ordered layout. Each target will stay on the screen for an entire second. Keeping in mind this length of time is imperative to winning this minigame. Players will often underestimate how much time they have to hit the 100-point target zone and will quickly fire despite having over half a second left before the target leaves. Now that may not sound like a lot of time, but in a minigame like this one where you've just got to move a little bit to get the right shot is big. If you don't hit the 100-point target zone, then don't sweat it and focus hard on where the next one is. Most players do not get 1500 points on this minigame unless their username begins with a Z. Duel minigames. Some are repeats of other minigames, which I'll indicate by saying dual version. Their strategy tends to not vary between versions though, so their sections are relatively short. Aim of the game, dual version. If both players end with the same amount of points, it's a tie. Same strat applies as the battle version. Shoot a 50-point card first, then another 50 or a ×2, and then shoot 3 ×2 cards for the last few. This should be even easier to accomplish considering there's only one other opponent you're playing with, so feel free to take your time properly identifying which card you've got to shoot next. Attention grabber. Get the rescue ship to the shore first by waving as wildly as you can. If both players get the ship to the shore at the same time, the winner is chosen at random. If neither player wants to get rescued from the island after 5 minutes passes, it's a tie. Your aim is to do extremely fast, small hand movements over larger ones. The control section tells you to hold your Wiimote upright and swing it left and right like so, but it's much easier, at least for me, to not use my wrist to swing it, but the vibration of my entire arm, similar to how a lot of people will vibrate their arm when button mashing. This swinging strat may not feel comfortable for you, in which case you need to find what you can consistently do in order to swing your Wiimote in these small, fast movements. Just don't do anything that'll result in large swings, and help should soon arrive. Balancing act. Roll your ball through a thwomp obstacle course to reach the goal before your opponent. If both players reach the end at the same time, the winner's chosen at random. If 5 minutes pass without either player cleaning up their act, it's a tie. The course layout is the same every time, but the thwomps slam down at differing intervals. Don't overcomplicate this one. When the minigame starts, roll your Wiimote in quick, tight, clockwise motions to roll forward as quickly as possible. Aim your Wiimote directly at the sensor bar as you do this for maximum accuracy. Take the platform up and continue quickly rolling down and past the first thwomp. It is highly unlikely this thwomp will be in a position to crush you at the beginning here. If the second thwomp is already in the air by the time you see it, then slow down and let it crush the ground before resuming, but most of the time you should be good to continue. Use the same logic for the next 3 thwomps as well. If you see that the thwomp ahead has been in the air for a while, then let it crush and then move forward. But if you see that it's currently rising or just stopped in the air, then commit to rolling as fast as possible. You obviously want to avoid getting crushed, but in addition to that, you don't want to wait by and let a thwomp slam down when you could have easily passed it by instead. These guys are more predictable than you think and will simply slam down after they've stopped in the air for a moment. So once you get that soundly in your head, this minigame should be a walk in the carnival. Blazing lassos. Twirl your lasso, rope a barrel, then yank it back to your pile. You'll get the points marked on each one. If both players end with the same amount of points, it's a tie. The possible numbers in the barrels are 5, 10, 30, and 50. The barrel layout is the same every time. As you can see, the barrels are arranged in ascending order, from 5 to 10 to 30 to 50 and repeating. When one of the barrels is removed, it'll get replaced with the same number within a few seconds. More than that though, I believe that this minigame, more than any other in this title, hinges the most on how well each player has a handle on the controls. In order to lasso a barrel, you must twirl your Wiimote until your lasso is glowing. Once it is, you have to swing your Wiimote forward, and after your lasso is around a barrel, swing your Wiimote back to retrieve it. Once retrieved, you must then repeat the process to get more barrels. This sounds easy on paper, but where a lot of players screw up is throwing the lasso out. They'll be twirling their Wiimote so hard that when their lasso starts glowing, the game registers these crazy twirls as a swing motion, resulting in players throwing out their lasso when they didn't mean to. In order to avoid this common misinput, ensure that you're twirling your Wiimote in tight tight, small turns, not large ones. Once you see your lasso start glowing, wait until the barrel you want is just about to line up with your character, and then do a quick large swinging motion down to nail it with your lasso. I say quick swinging motion because not all lasso tosses are equal. If you do a slow swing, then your lasso will take longer to reach the barrel, messing up your timing. But if you do it quick, then your character will snap the lasso forward for an instant retrieval. Keep this part in mind. It is possible to retrieve the 50-point barrels one after another, but you've got to be really fast to pull it off. Unless you have experience doing so, consider instead swapping between 50-point barrels and 30-point ones so that you have more time to get your lasso glowing for retrievals. Breakneck Building. It's a construction marathon. Saw the log, pound the nail, and then paint the wall. If both players finish at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. If neither player knows how to do any kind of maintenance here after 5 minutes, it's a tie. Each of the 3 tasks require a unique motion. The first task is sawing a log in half, which you can do quick motions for so long as you keep your Wiimote pointed directly at the sensor bar. If you have trouble with this, then opt in for wider motions instead. The second task is swinging a hammer, which you want to do large, quick swinging motions for. Small and fast ones are no good since the nail won't go in as far. The third task is the most important one to get right since it's where the most time can be saved. You're required to cover all of the wood with paint. You cannot tilt your brush in any way. It will remain in a horizontal position the entire time, meaning to get the most out of your strokes, prioritize brushing vertically. When you finish a column, move to the next one and brush vertical once more. Rinse and repeat. Keep an eye out for spots you miss. This task is very finicky and wants this entire thing to be covered with paint, so any spots without paint that are more than a few pixels won't fly. Bumper balloons, dual version. If both players finish at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. If neither player pops their balloons within 5 minutes, it's a tie. You want to take the same path that the far left and far right player take in the 2v2 version of this minigame. Straight up, avoiding your opponent's balloon and nailing your 2 balloons at the top. Afterwards, cross over the grass and pop your 2 balloons in the middle, then the lone one in the corner. Just like before, if your opponent is about to push you into their balloon, then back off and resume moving towards yours. Cardiators. Take turns selecting cards that launch attacks on your rival. Reduce your rival's life meter to 0 to win. If somehow neither player manages to finish the other one off and all cards are used up, then the cards will reset for some reason and allow the next player to finish off the other with whatever card they choose, despite any card having the ability to win the minigame, since the only way for this to happen is both players being left at 1 HP. Weird. At the beginning, 3 face-down numbered cards appear, each with a number from 1 to 3. Both players select a card, and the player whose number is higher goes first. They then compete in a children's card game, with 20 health points each. A set of numbered cards from 1 to 12 is displayed face-down on a nearby table, where each player has 10 seconds to pick a numbered card, which also has a character on it. The card their cursor highlights is automatically picked for them. The character on the card is summoned to attack the opponent and deal damage equal to its value. The first player to reduce their opponent's HP to 0 wins. Here are all the possible cards that can appear in this minigame. Note how despite the numbers go up to 12, some are missing, such as 3, 4, and 11. 1 is a baby penguin, which attacks by sliding into the player. 2 is an Ukiki who bonks him on the head. 5 is a Bob-omb that blows up in the player's hands. 6 is 3 Ukikis who do multiple bonks on the head. 7 is 7 pushy penguins that bulldoze through the player. 8 is an angry wiggler that runs at the player. 9 is 3 bullet bills that wombo combo the player into oblivion. 10 is a thwomp that falls out of nowhere and flattens the player, and 12, the strongest of all, is a chain chomp that flings the player high into the sky. Unfortunately, there are no predetermined card layouts that the minigame cycles between. All the cards are randomly shuffled, making this minigame based purely on luck. However, if you press the 2 button on your Wiimote as soon as you're about to get hit, nothing will happen. Cosmic Slalom. Speed through the racing tube to reach the finish first. If both players finish at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. The course is the same every time, but the fences are not. Hitting one will cause you to spin out and slow down, where after 1 second passes, you'll get back to your max speed. You have 3 boosts at your disposal, which will blast you ahead, allowing you to break through any fences in your way without slowing down, making this ability a really useful tool for for getting out of a tight situation where you can't move in time to avoid a fence. When the minigame begins, both players are in their own small tubes with little room to move around and avoid the fences. Try to dodge them without touching the walls, which will slow you down if you push against them. This slowdown isn't comparable to hitting a fence though, so if you aren't confident in your precision when tilting the Wiimote, then feel free to do a quick tap on the wall for an easy dodge of the fence, and then return to the middle. After you leave your tunnel, you'll enter the main part of the course that you'll share with the other player. While it may seem counterintuitive, taking tight turns by driving alongside the walls will not make you finish this minigame any faster than if you were in the middle the entire time. This is important because players who assume it's faster are putting themselves at greater risk of hitting fences, since you aren't given nearly as much time to avoid them as you are if you stay in the middle or off to the other side. Should you get caught on inner wall turns, whether by your own movement or by a player pushing you towards it, use your boost the instant you see a fence. Don't be tempted to dodge it on your own. Odds are you won't be fast enough. A boost will allow you to cruise through multiple fences in a row before losing gas. While pushing your opponent can be a useful strat, don't overdo it or else they'll catch on. All you need is one really nice moment where they're close to a fence where you can then suddenly push into them and cause a wipeout. If you're ahead of your opponent and they're about to boost past you, try to block them off. This will waste their boost a bit and hopefully keep them behind you where they belong. You could boost early in the match to make sure you're ahead of them to try and pull this off, but I prefer focusing on the course and avoiding the fences, since diverting your attention can often result in screwing up. Eye Brawl. Make Mr. Eye dizzy. Spin the targeting cursor around him as fast as you can. If both players defeat the third Mr. Eye forms at the same time, the winner is chosen at random. If 5 minutes passes without making the Eye dizzy enough to destroy him, it's a tie. You may be tempted to do really quick, small rotations around Mr. Eye, but don't. As the hint says, big, accurate moves are much more effective. You want your cursor to go in the largest circle possible as fast as possible without accidentally pointing your cursor away from the center bar. This sounds super easy, but a lot of players will either make their spins too small, have reduced speed, or will point a little too far outward, resulting in their progress being hindered. There are 3 forms of Mr. Eye, with each one being bigger than the last. These don't affect how you should play the minigame and merely serves as a marker for progress. Flip the Chimp. Dual version. If both players reach the end at the exact same time, it's a tie. The strat here is the same as it is in the 4-player version of this minigame. Just flip the monkey whenever you see a coconut about to fall onto him without doing any unnecessary flips, since they end up wasting time. Frozen assets. Punch and kick icicles to get the gems inside. The first to collect 5 is the winner. If both players get 5 crystals, it's a tie. If 5 minutes pass without either player collecting enough, it's also a tie. The bars on the top indicate how many crystals each player has collected. The freezy in the background will rise up and slam down, causing icicles to fall and hit the ground. You can destroy these icicles by punching or jump kicking. If you're lucky, then a crystal will pop out, which you must then collect. They can fly out every which way though, so even if you're the one that destroyed the icicle, there's a chance that your opponent may be close enough to steal wherever the crystal lands. To avoid this, smack your opponent so they can't pull it off. You can also ground pound in this minigame, which will stun your opponent for a whopping 4 seconds, but it's super predictable and hard to pull off here, especially against players that know what they're doing. I opt in for quick jump kicks instead as I make my way to the icicles. You can easily jump and flick your kick behind you to swat your opponent away as you collect the crystals. Sometimes no icicles will fall down after the freezy slams the ground, and other times the icicles that do fall won't contain a single crystal, so each round, as I call them, isn't guaranteed to result in a player grabbing a crystal. This is very unlikely to happen unless you and your opponent are fooling around, but icicles can drop on top of one another. If you destroy the one at the bottom, then the one above will drop down a level. This formation can happen anywhere, and it can get crazy if you and your opponent allow the icicles to keep on falling without any intervention at all. The freezy will just continue to slam the ground repeatedly, resulting in towers of icicles all over the place. The maximum height they can reach is 3 icicles tall, and if you manage to land on top of an icicle, you can ground pound through all of them at once. It seems like the freezy will stop slamming down once the icicle count reaches about 20. Once you reduce the amount of icicles on the field to around 17 or less, then the freezy will resume slamming down once more. Eye on the prize. Tilt the sorting device to pour the colored blobs into their appropriate containers. If both players sort the same number of blobs correctly, it's a tie. The blob layouts are the same for each player. You tilt Tilt your Wiimote left to sort blobs to the pink container and right to sort blobs to the green container. You do not have to tilt your Wiimote at a specific angle to get a blob to enter the container you want. Even a slight tilt towards your desired container will cleanly deliver the blob into it. This means that you shouldn't overdo it with your tilts. Doing so means you have to spend more time tilting your Wiimote to the other direction when a different colored blob appears from the top. By tilting only a little towards your desired container, you have less distance you have to tilt when switching between them. The blobs could alternate colors over and over, or just give you the same color 5 times in a row. You never really know. Keep your eyes focused on where the blobs are coming out of and immediately tilt your Wiimote towards the container that matches its color. During the last 5 seconds, the blobs will stop falling for a moment and then a bunch of them will fall side by side with one another, requiring extreme care as you quickly tilt your Wiimote one way and then the other. If you're playing against a CPU, then feel free to spam the pause button to make this reaction minigame a whole lot easier. If you're playing against a friend, then spam the pause button to make your friendship a whole lot weaker. Lava lobbers. Fire straight shots and lob high shots at your distant opponent. Score 3 hits first. If both players are eliminated at the same time, it's a tie. If the timer reaches 0, it's also a tie. There are 2 types of shots, straights and lobs. Straight shots are quick and what you should prioritize when your opponent is directly in front of you. Odds are they'll get off a straight shot on you as well if you're both just facing one another, so you want to weave in and out of your opponent's firing range, baiting them to take a shot, then move in for your shot and retreating while they have invincibility frames. If you get shot, then take advantage of your second of invincibility and go directly in front of them, firing straight shots. Don't overdo it or you may end up taking another shot for thinking your invulnerability lasts longer than it does. Lob shots are great for catching your opponent off guard. If they're trying to move towards you, fire a lob and move away. Since lobs take a while to reach your opponent, they'll either forget you lobbed a shot and move in anyways, resulting in a hit, or will be hesitant to move towards you. You can take advantage of their hesitation by quickly moving in and firing a straight shot. This switch up of lob to straight shots is great because both of your shots will arrive at around the same time, forcing your opponent to either commit to a difficult shot at you or to retreat away, which can be difficult if you've cornered them onto the edge. If your opponent loves moving around a ton, then shoot more lob shots than normal so they have to pay more attention to where they're going, something they aren't forced to do when dealing with straight shots, which are a lot more clear in their objective. When changing directions, try to only do so when you're not in front of the other player since there's a slight delay in the shift. Lob to rob. Shoot the mushroom targets to pick up points. Avoid the Goomba targets. If both players end up with the same amount of points, it's a tie. There are 3 types of targets: mushrooms worth 10 points, one-up mushrooms worth 30 points, and Goombas which subtract 10 points. These point values can be seen in the opening of the minigame via this sign. Both players will receive the same amount of mushrooms, one-up mushrooms, and Goombas in each respective set, but their placements will be different, meaning that one player may have an easier time shooting quickly than another if the mushrooms show up where their cursor is. One big detail here is that your Wiimote cursor on the screen is not equivalent to where you shoot your ball. Where you are vertically is completely ignored. The game only cares about where your cursor is horizontally, so your cursor can be above the target, but you'll still nail it as long as you're horizontally lined up with the target. With this in mind, you can quickly move your cursor from mushroom to mushroom without worry at all about being accurate in terms of up or down. Left and right is all that matters. When all mushrooms in a set have been knocked down, the next set will appear, so if you accidentally hit a Goomba, quickly get the mushrooms so that you can move on. Loco Motives. Keep your trains from hitting your balloons. Point select your trains to reverse their direction. If both players pop 3 balloons at the same time, it's a tie. If neither player manages to lose after 5 minutes passes, it's a tie. Each player has 3 trains and 5 balloons to watch. If a train is about to hit a balloon, its siren goes off. A train stops moving once it pops a balloon, but it starts moving again after 5 seconds. Once it begins moving again, you'll notice that its speed will reset to its slowest value. A bursted balloon will come back after 10 seconds. The objective is to tap your trains to reverse their direction so that any balloon close to one doesn't get popped by it. This is much easier said than done, considering your trains are probably going to go at different speeds at some points or on different tracks, and your opponent has their own trains with their own sirens that might make you confused as to which train is close to what balloon. I'll refer to each train by the length of the track they ride along before hitting a balloon: the short train, middle train, and long train. When the minigame begins, all trains will be moving at a fairly relaxed pace. It's highly unlikely you'll falter here, as these trains move so slow and give you a nice siren warning in advance for you to tap them. What's great about these siren warnings is that they don't activate based on a train's distance from a balloon, but the time until it hits the balloon, which is a very important distinction, since if the siren did base it on distance, then when the train starts speeding up over time, you would hear a siren go off followed by an immediate pop of a balloon due to the train's speed. But since it's based on time, these sirens will always give you just enough of a warning to stop a pop from happening should you tap on the respective train fast enough. However, when the trains reach their fastest speed, the sirens become very unhelpful, as they'll be going off non-stop since the trains are now always in danger of popping a balloon soon. Just tune them out once it gets to that point. Lack of speed isn't why some people lose this minigame, by the way. It's bad timing. If the trains are moving fast and you've got two of them about to hit a balloon at the same time, then unless they're further away, you can only save one and must sacrifice the other. If you find yourself in this position, whether it be two trains hitting a balloon at once or all three, always save the longer train. Recall that when a train hits a balloon, it will be reset to its slowest speed. You want the short train speed to be reset instead of the long train, since this short guy going fast requires a lot more maintenance to keep it safe than the long one going fast, which, although scary at times, doesn't require as much attention. Ideally, you don't want to be put into a situation where you have to pick which train hits a balloon and which doesn't, so pay close attention to what your current layout of trains looks like. If you notice that, as they speed up, they're reaching their balloons at around the same time every other tap, then you're gonna put yourself in danger later on. Consider tapping the short train a little earlier than you would have otherwise to offset it from the others so that they aren't in sync. Do this with the medium train too if it becomes an issue. So long as you offset these two trains, there's no need to mess with the long one, since it's automatically offset due to the rest of them being messed with. Paint Misbehavin', dual version. If both players end with the same amount of points, it's a tie. Unlike the 2v2 version of this minigame, you don't have a teammate, so you're free to move the entire length of your side without having to share it. Because of this, you have a lot more control over the outcome. Paint the Goombas directly in front of you, and when you've painted them your color, quickly move to the other side and paint the ones closest to you once more. If you have more Goombas painted than your opponent and they keep replacing the paint on the one you just painted, then paint it back once more. Fighting your opponent over a single Goomba is great when you're ahead, since it wastes their time. Obviously, if you're the one behind, then forget about the Goomba they painted and try to go for ones that are out of their reach, saving the Goombas they can hit for the last few seconds of the minigame. Pumper cars. Pump the handcart lever to get your vehicle to the finish line first. If both players reach the finish at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. If neither player reaches the goal within 5 minutes, it's a tie. To operate the levers correctly, you must shake the Wiimote up and down while holding the A button and 1 button at the same time. If you don't hold both buttons down, the cart will not move no matter how much you shake your Wiimote. The layout of the minigame is the same every time, not like it matters considering it's all just for looks. There's not a single obstacle for you to avoid, nor any parts of the course where you have to pump at a certain speed to get ahead. Just focus on holding down the 2 buttons and pumping as fast as humanly possible to beat your opponent. Rotation Station. Be the first to climb to the top of the tower. Move the camera around to better see where you're going. If both players reach the end at the exact same time, the winner's chosen by port priority. The layout is the same every time. I'll be showing off multiple routes of differing speeds, not just the fastest. This is because the world record path is technical and difficult to pull off, where failure to execute may cause you to lose against players that you easily could have won against if you just took a safer route instead. For this reason, I'll be labeling what route you should take depending on who your opponent is. If you just want to grind out the fastest path so you're a god at it on the regular, then be my guest. If you're playing against someone who's new to this minigame or just isn't the best at it, then you can play it mega safe and just take the obvious path that the minigame outlines for you, never taking even the slightest risky shortcut and just keeping on the road to destiny. It ain't fast, but since your opponent doesn't know which direction to go or is poor at platforming, there's no need for you to do anything riskier. If you're playing against someone who has played this minigame before, then add doing this shortcut at the beginning, where you jump onto the moving platform, full hop back, followed by a full hop to the circular platform. If your opponent doesn't know this skip, then they'll be pretty far behind, letting you play the minigame out like normal without taking any more risks. Now, this world record path, as said before, is incredibly difficult to pull off, but can definitely be done with consistency given enough practice. Learn it well and you will never lose this minigame except to those that perform it too. Before we begin though, I want to clarify an issue you might run into when attempting to pull off this path, and it's missing your jumps onto higher blocks. You can see here that even with a full hop, I can't reach this block. The reason for this is because I'm turning against the block. Now if I instead directly face the block as I jump against it, then the game will push my character up onto the block. This is only for when you're against the block. You can be turning right before it and get up just fine. You can even turn a tiny bit while against the block too, but any more than a slither and you won't make it. Alright, let's do it. Scale the blocks like normal, hop onto the moving platform, full hop back, then do a full hop forward and to the right onto this block higher up. Remember, you've got to be directly facing it the moment you touch it in order to make this jump. When you do, full hop to the moving platform, then full hop up to the circular platform. Face this platform directly too. Try not to turn much while against it. Scale the blocks like normal and line yourself up on the left side of this block. If you did the first section as described, then you should have a second or two to relax and do this. When aligned, wait for the vertical moving platform ahead to lower and full hop towards it with a cute left turn at the end to make sure you land. Align yourself so you're just hanging off the edge of the platform on the right. When the platform comes within range, hold up and perform a full hop onto it. Then, and this is the hardest jump of the route, full hop onto this block by heading left and then forward. You've got to move to the left enough for this jump so that you don't get stuck on this higher up block to the right, but you can't be moving so much to the left that when you're up against the block, you're turning against it, which will result in you falling. This is easily the jump you want to practice the most. If you make it, then do a direct full jump to the moving platform above, leap to the platforms to the left, which are a little obscured by what direction your camera's facing at this time, then full jump to the goal for an insane time. Feel free to edit the route however you see fit depending on what skill level your opponent is or if you notice they mess up. Saucer Swarm, dual version. If both players have the same score by the end, it's a tie. Other than that, there are no changes compared to the 2v2 version. Get a handle on tilting your Wiimote properly, watch for saucers that get close to you, and don't focus on the golden saucer if it's already started moving along the ground. Settle it in court. Wave the Wii remote to shoot the ball when the ball icon passes through the shot window. If both players get the same score by the end, it's a tie. The maximum amount of shots you can make is 18. There's a meter at the top of the screen with the basketball going from left to right across it one at a time. When the ball icon reaches the yellow marker at the center, you've got to swing the Wiimote forward to make a shot. Every now and then a Goomba icon slides across. When it reaches the marker, you've got to press the A or B button to pass it to a Goomba that'll then shoot it in. No motion controls necessary. The speed the icons go will vary. For regular shots that require you to swing the Wiimote, make your motion quick and short. You don't have to do a big waving motion, that'll just waste time. Wait until the icon is just about to line up with the yellow circle in the middle and do a quick swing of your Wiimote forward. Remember that the Goomba passes do not require you to swing your Wiimote, only the A or B button press is required, so simply time it when the Goomba icon is about to line up with the yellow circle. So long as your input is correct and the icon somewhat lines up with the yellow circle, you'll get a basket. Don't get distracted by it bouncing off a rim and going in, or even if you miss entirely. Just focus on the next icon that slides in so you aren't caught off guard by a fast one. Shake it up, dual version. If both players shake the same amount, the winner's chosen at random. If no one shakes the cans at all, or just a tiny bit, it's a tie. Grab a buddy and get to shaking. Think of it as a bonding experience. Specter Inspector. Find the classic foes hiding in the furniture. Find 3 first. Ghosts won't count towards your score. If both players get their final foe at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. There are 11 enemies. Of these enemies, these 6 will show up every time you play the minigame, and of these 6, these 4 of them hide in unique spots where you're guaranteed to find them and not a ghost. So let's focus on them first. This mansion painting will always contain a Boo, which you see flying within it. This painting with a Fly Guy's face on it will always contain Fly Guy. This yellow vase will always contain a penguin, and this white vase will always contain a Goomba. Keep in mind that these paintings and vases are in different spots each time you play the minigame, which is alright. All you need to do is memorize these particular paintings and vases and you'll win this minigame every time against a casual player. But let's discuss the other enemies' locations just in case. The Koopa Troopa and Piranha Plant will always be under a sheet on a pedestal, but unlike the 4 enemies we just discussed, you run the risk of running into a ghost since there are multiple pedestals in the room, which is why you want to prioritize the 4 unique enemies instead. But if you see your opponent is about to seize a victory, then quickly shining your light on one of the sheets and hoping you're lucky may nab you the win. Important detail here, the Boo and Fly Guy paintings will always be on opposite sides of the room. The same goes for the Penguin and Goomba, as well as the Koopa Troopa and Piranha Plant respectively. Knowing this, you can quickly narrow down where the guaranteed characters are if you find one of them on one side, since you can rest assured knowing that their counterpart is somewhere on the other. You can start making educated guesses before the minigame even begins, considering it pans around the room a little before you're allowed to move, mainly with the paintings since there's only 3 on each side, which makes them pretty easy to check. Now let's go over the enemies that aren't guaranteed to show up. This plate cover may contain an amp, this piano may contain a flutter, this fireplace may contain a potaboo, this right curtain may contain a thwomp, and this left curtain may contain a womp. These ones you shouldn't be going for unless your opponent is close to a win and your only chance is to roll the die. If all it took to check a spot was a quick flash of your flashlight on it, then maybe these would be more viable, especially because ghosts can only show up from sheets, vases, and paintings, but since you need to wait a moment while lighting a spot for it to count, it's better to just search for the guaranteed 4 we talked about. Sugar Rush Dual Version. If both players place their last topping at the exact same time, the winner's chosen at random. Unlike the 2v2 version, you don't have to worry about a partner screwing you up here, and the cakes tend to have lower topping counts as well. Feel free to quickly go from topping to topping, dropping them around the area that the center image shows you. Remember that you don't have to be exact with your placements, even a little around them will do. Surf's Way Up. Steer your space sled through the point goals to rack up the highest score. If both players end up with the same score, it's a tie. There are 5 target types: 10 points, 20 points, 30 points, 50 points, and Bowser. Hitting each target will net you the respective amount of points, but hitting a Bowser target will result in all of your points going down the drain. No point in hitting that one. Hey, I'm getting a little deja vu here. There is no strict guaranteed amount of targets that will show up each time. Here is about what the target amounts will be each time you play. Again, with a couple of them, mainly the 30-point values and below, being 1 more or 1 less than what's shown here. When playing the minigame, you have the option to boost. Holding this button down will cause you to be further ahead, but will give you less reaction time to react to upcoming targets than if you decided to not boost. The amount of time lost is not that much, honestly. So to prevent your opponent from nabbing everything before you, just hold the boost button down the entire time and quickly tilt your Wiimote towards where the higher point targets are. Obviously, the Bowser targets are a huge no-go, and you've got to get away from them as quickly as possible so you don't zero out your points. If you make contact with a player, you'll bump into them and knock them decently far away, even with just a tap. So if you see a Bowser target close to them, try going for a cheeky little bump if they're not expecting it. Whichever player is closest to the middle of a target will grab it, so keep that in mind as well as you go for the occasional bump. Swing Kings Dual Version. If both players end with the same amount of points, it's a tie. The pitches are the same regardless if you're playing the 4-player version or this dueling version, so keep an eye out for high pitches, medium pitches, and low pitches especially. Wing and a scare. Tilt the wings of your plane as you try to clear the obstacles and reach the finish line first. If both players make it to the goal at the same time, it's a tie. If 5 minutes pass without either player figuring out to pilot a plane, it's also a tie. The layout is the same every time, so feel free to practice this one. There are 8 holes. For the first hole, stay level. Once you're through, tilt to the right to make it through the second hole shaped like an X. The third hole will be column shaped, so you've got to tilt to the right even more to make yourself vertical. The fourth hole is diagonal, where you've simply got to return to your original tilting right position. Keep holding this position as you go through the fifth hole, which is again X-shaped. The sixth hole is another column-shaped one, so tilt to the right even more and go vertical. The seventh hole is the first to have an obstacle in the way before you reach it. Luckily, being vertical here will let you safely pass by the pillar on the left. The instant you pass it, quickly tilt to the left so that you both avoid the floating platform below and make it through this diagonal hole. Go level here so that you don't hit the floating platform below, then quickly tilt right to avoid hitting the pillar on the right, finally entering the last hole, the eighth one, which unlike the others is a tunnel which rotates even while you're inside it, requiring you to slightly adjust your tilt as you make your way to the end so that you don't end up knocking around inside. The tilt of this hole will be the same every time when you arrive, so long as you haven't hit anything before reaching it. If you did hit a lot of obstacles beforehand, then it's possible it may be in the middle of starting a clockwise spin instead of a counterclockwise one. Thankfully, you can see it in advance from previous holes and prepare to tilt left before this pillar instead so that you can make it through. This tunnel doesn't repeatedly turn 360 degrees, but will instead stop at the most extreme turn your plane can do, which makes sense considering it'd be pretty unfair if it kept going since your plane can't go upside down. If you memorize what you've got to do here, then this one should be pretty easy so long as you have a handle on tilting your Wii remote. It's all about keeping a right tilt for most of the minigame and then adapting once the obstacles appear. You're the Bob-omb. Hit switches until you or your foe finds the one that blows up Big Bob-omb. There's only one live switch. If both players select their live switch, then both Big Bob-ombs will explode, resulting in a tie. If both players somehow manage to choose every switch except for the live one, then it's also a tie. If you don't choose a switch after 10 seconds, then you'll be forced to select the one closest to you. If both switches are of equal distance away, then you'll move to the one on the left. Some switches will burn out sooner and some will burn out later. This is merely to screw with you and make you think you've got the winning switch even if you didn't. Unfortunately, the switch layouts are randomized between the two players, meaning you can't copy the switch your opponent selects and hope for a tie. So choose whichever one feels lucky and have at it. Mario Party 8 is a truly fascinating entry into this franchise. It introduced motion controls into the mix, widening the possibilities of wacky minigames for you and I to enjoy. The concepts for its boards are so unforgettable to me, whether it be the roaring train of Shy Guy's Perplex Express, the bustling Koopa's Tycoon Town with its jammin' tune, or the never-ending maze that is King Boo's haunted hideaway. They each have their own vibe that really makes them feel more alive than a lot of the previous boards in the series. If there's one thing that I think holds this game back though, it was the decision to get rid of orb spaces. The candies here prevent the gameplay experience from being as complex and strategic as previous entries, and I imagine is in part why some may not hold it to as high a degree as the other titles as well. That being said, regardless of any downsides it may have, this game does deserve to be remembered. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.